be a little bit louder. Then I see a number of call-in participants on the line. If you are calling in to speak on a specific item, if you can please hang up and wait for your item to be introduced for discussion. We have a number of items that have been pulled for discussion this morning. We want to make sure that you call in when the item you wish to speak to has been pulled. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, good morning and welcome to this May 5th meeting of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. This is our fourth video conferencing board meeting that we've had due to the coronavirus. And we certainly appreciate everybody's working with us to accommodate the changes that we've had to implement over the last, 7 or 8 weeks, I guess now. At this point, I would like to call the meeting to order. And I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all 5 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage at www.sandiegocounty.gov/telecomments, and please do not call in until the item that you wish to comment on has been called by the chair. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Jacob?
Here.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Present.
Supervisor Fletcher? Vice Chairman Desmond?
Here.
Chairman Cox?
Here. With that, we will go ahead and start with the invocation, which today is going to be given to us virtually by the lead pastor of the City View Church, Troy Singleberry Terry, and then I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would, you're at home, or if you're here virtually, if you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor, if you'd go ahead and lead us in the invocation.
Yes, it's an honor to be with you all today. And not only am I proud to live in San Diego County for the last 5 years, but I'm honored to lead pastor City View Church for over 98 years of existence. Our church has been here. I want to thank you, Supervisor Cox, and your staff for the privilege of being able to do the invocation before your meeting this morning. Before I pray, I want to thank each of you and your staff for your dedication, for your passion, for your hard work, your energy, and all that you do for the county of San Diego. As our elected leaders, you're always in our prayers, as well as your families and loved ones, not just for what you do in our county, but for who you are as people in general. I want to publicly thank each of you and your staff for all the hard work y'all have been doing to even a greater degree since this COVID-19 pandemic has hit our county and communities. 1 Timothy 2:2 reminds us to pray for those in authority over us so that we may live peaceful and quiet lives marked by godliness and dignity. I know each of you care for the safety of the people in our county. So my prayer for each of you is that God will give you wisdom, strength, direction, peace, unity in the decisions that you all make as we move forward in these unprecedented times that we're living in. So let us pray as we bow our heads at this time. Father, we thank you for the many blessings you've given us as a county here in San Diego. We thank you for life itself. Thank you for the freedom that you have graciously given to us. We lift up our mayor our mayor and supervisors in the 5 districts they represent today as they make decisions that will affect our lives as a county. But more than the difficult and political decisions they make, they need prayer just like we all need as they balance their political lives with their personal lives, with their spouses and families during these unprecedented times. So today we pray that they would know and feel the prayers of people in our county on a daily basis. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and challenges and issues during this new norm. Give them a sense of confidence in what is good and fitting. God, we thank you for their willingness to serve our county in these leadership roles, and we pray specifically for their spouses and children for protection, peace, and provision for them. We're also grateful and pray for the staff members of our mayor and supervisors as they navigate conversations and respond to people's concerns. Give them wisdom and stamina to steward the power of the office they represent. Wrap your arms around these men and women to show them love and grace and strength and the encouragement they need. As our mayor and supervisors work together to find solutions to difficult problems, we ask that you guide them to continually love to those they interact with. They deal with a lot of pressing issues to address. Give them wisdom from on high when it comes to policy changes that affect our county, especially when dealing with the most vulnerable, especially children, youth, and our seniors, as well as the businesses in our community. Help them to continually be courageous as they represent us, as they find solutions to meet everyone's desires and needs as best as they can. God, please be with them as they weigh the pros and cons of all the requests that come their way. Give them wisdom on high how to best represent everyone. Heavenly Father, we also ask that you would continually give our leaders courage so that even when it's hard, they would continually be bold to represent the needs of our county. We pray your blessings on their agenda set before them today. Please give them an assurance of what would benefit those who live and work in around our beloved county as they deal with the COVID-19 issues in front of them today. Give them discernment as they develop a plan of reopening our communities safely, dealing with budget matters, policy issues, and intergovernmental and legislative matters too. In your mighty name we pray, amen.
Amen. Pastor Singletary, thank you so much for your invocation today. We appreciate your being with us virtually and would invite you sometime to come back to a regular board meeting when it's a little more traditional.
Oh, I'd be honored. Y'all have a great day.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on now to the public communications. I believe we have one speaker that wished to have their comments read into the record, so I'll ask the clerk of the board to go ahead and do that at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. There is one comment submitted by the public on non-agenda items. The comment is from Luis Russo. She states, "Why are we sitting at home with our children using more power than we usually would, and yet you refuse to pressure SDG&E to lower rates?" There are also a large number of other comments submitted under non-agenda public communication that were related to items on today's agenda. Those comments have been distributed to the board and will be filed with the appropriate agenda items.
Very good. That completes public communications, and we'll move on now to the approval of the statement of the proceedings for the regular meeting of April 21st, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Vice Chair Desmond and seconded by Supervisor Gaspar. Is there any discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob? Supervisor Jacob?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
And Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
We'll proceed now to the formation of the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar will be considered to be routine and enacted upon by one motion unless there's a desire on the part of the public or members of the board to pull items for further discussion. Would the clerk please identify those items that have been requested to be pulled by the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 1 has been pulled by the public. Item 2 has been pulled by the public. Item 13 has been pulled by the public. Item 14 has been pulled by the public. Item 15 has been pulled by the public. Item 16 has been pulled by the public. And item 17, or closed session matters, will be considered at the conclusion of the board's public session. And I would note that there is also one item on the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board meeting. That item relates to item number 16, so that item will be heard concurrently with item number 16. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda may be placed on the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
Very Very good. Let me start off by asking Supervisor Jacob if she has any items she would like to pull.
Mr. Chairman, no additional items and no comments, and I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll move on now to Supervisor Gaspar.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have an additional comment on item number 3. This is the authorization for amendments to extend existing behavioral health service contracts. With this item, we're extending many behavioral health contracts for an additional year to allow for continuity of critical mental health and substance use disorder services. These services are desperately needed now more than ever. It's my request that our Department of Purchasing and Contracting work with our behavioral health providers to ensure we have contract flexibility to address any challenges related to COVID-19 that are impacting how the services are being delivered. We need to proactively address these challenges to allow our providers the flexibility they need to continue to provide quality services in a new and innovative way to meet the demands of our community. That concludes my comments. I'll second the consent calendar.
Move on now to Supervisor Fletcher.
I have no items to pull and no comments to make.
Okay, Vice Chair Desmond.
No items and no comments. Thanks.
Okay, I have no additional items to pull. So we have a motion by Supervisor Jacob, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar to approve the consent calendar. Would the clerk please identify those items we'll be voting on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will be voting on all items except items 1, 2, 13, 14, 15, 16, and item 1 on the Air Pollution Control Board agenda, and item 17 are closed session matters.
Okay. Again, we have a motion by Supervisor Jacob, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob,
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar,
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher,
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Thank you very much. There are certainly a large number of speakers that want to talk today on some of the items that have been pulled. And what we're going to do is ask that you please call in on the conference line once I have introduced that particular item. So for those items that have been requested to be pulled, we'll be discussing items in the following order. We'll deal with item number 14 first, then we'll deal with item 1, then we'll deal with item 13. I take that back. All right, so we'll go with item 14. We'll deal with item 1 as a presentation. We'll go to item number 2, and then we'll go to item 13, and then to item 15, and then item 16. And I would point out that we do have a large number of requests to speak. Last count, it was about 140. So I'm going to cut the speaking time down to 2 minutes just because we're going to be here for a long period of time. And I imagine there'll probably be a potential for a lot of repetitious comments. So we'll ask the speakers to please comply with that. You'll hear a gong, and the clerk of the board will, if you go over that 2-minute time frame, we'll have to advise you that your time is up. So again, we are going to start off with item number 1. This is an item, item 14. This was an item that was docketed by myself and Supervisor Fletcher. It's creating a plan to safely reopen San Diego. I know we had at least 22 speakers that wanted to speak on this particular item. So any member of the public that has requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line number now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it's your turn to speak, and the speakers will be called up in the order in which the calls come in. So if you wish to speak on item number 14, now is the time to call in. If you want to speak on other items, please refrain until that item is called up for discussion. With that, let me go ahead and make some introductory comments in regards to item 14. As members of the Board of Supervisors COVID-19 Subcommittee, working in coordination with the Public Health Officer and the County Chief Administrative Officer, Supervisor Fletcher and I have developed the Reopening San Diego's Business Safety Framework here before you today. I'm proud to bring this item forward today to support San Diego's business community. It has not been easy to adapt to the governor's stay-at-home orders. We've heard loud and clear from business owners who are struggling to keep afloat, spending their last bit of money to keep the lights on. We can't do anything about the governor's stay-at-home order. That is up to the governor. And as you heard him say yesterday, some businesses will be ahead of others when the time comes to reopen. But what we can do is to help make it easier for businesses to reopen safely and as smoothly as possible if they have a set of guidelines to work from. And that is what today's item will do. This framework is a baseline that businesses will need to implement when the time comes to reopen for them. The measures which are likely to be included in future public health orders lifting business restrictions reflect input the county has received from the Responsible COVID Economic Reopening Task Force, or simply referred to as the Recovery Advisory Group, which was established by myself and Mayor Faulkner, who is going to be joining us today via video teleconferencing. This framework includes input received by construction industry associations through the efforts of Supervisor Kristen Gaspar and the North and East County business owners through the efforts of Supervisor Jim Desmond and Supervisor Diane Jacob. I want to thank my colleagues for the work that they've been doing on this and want to now introduce my COVID subcommittee partner, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. I appreciate in particular your hard work along with Mayor Faulkner on putting together a framework. And the aim and essence of what we would love to do is to have something that is simple, gives general guidance and direction, and recognizes that as we move forward, we have to adapt the way we do. We can't just immediately go back to the way things were before, absent a vaccine or a therapeutic treatment. We're going to have to adapt our daily way of life. That's where things like physical distancing and face cover and hygiene and hand washing all come into play. And so given that science and data have been driven the decisions, as the science and data now point to us being able to move into this gradual easing of requirements and restrictions, it is important that we work with our business community to try and put out a framework to give some guidance and some input on common sense, simple things that everyone can do to ensure that we don't see a return to a surge. We don't see a significant second wave. Moving too rapidly or not moving responsibly enough would trigger that, which would be a devastating disregard for all the commitment and sacrifice that's been made today. And so I think it's in that spirit that the Reopen San Diego Task Force has met. Supervisor Cox and the mayor have spent a lot of time with businesses. A general framework of 5 general categories around employee safety, face coverings, making sure sick employees stay home, customer safety, encouraging businesses to take into account the protections for their customers, sanitation, physical distancing, and communication is a good guide. There could be additional guidance that comes from the state or even the federal government about what conditions should look like as we open. And we will no doubt get additional guidance and input from businesses that would like to see changes or tweaks. But I think this is a good starting point, and I'm proud to support the effort and would make a motion for the adoption.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher. As I mentioned, Mayor Faulkner is going to be joining us via video conferencing, and I asked him to join us to provide an update from the Recover Advisory Group. This body includes regional stakeholders from throughout the county, from chamber groups to labor groups and everything in between. We've brought them together to create a reopening plan with recommended guidelines and measures that they are willing to take to protect the public and their own employees. I participated in a conference call just last Friday and was impressed with the depth of conversation and the planning efforts that have been taking place. And with that, I'd like to invite Mayor Faulkner to join us on the line and say a few words and provide an update on the group's progress. Mayor Faulkner, please take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Thank you to all the members of the board. And first and foremost, to every member of the board, thank you for your leadership and thank you for your partnership. We are very well positioned in this county because of the actions that we have taken together. And as we talk about this item today, probably nothing more important than reopening our businesses safely, as Chairman Cox and Supervisor Fletcher just spoke about. I'm happy to go through some of the results from the recovery task force. Again, this was a county-wide task force, and I think this is a real opportunity, first and foremost, just as this county and this region provided the leadership on the right thing to do at our beaches and how to do it, a statewide model. San Diego County can now lead the state in safely reopening our businesses. And we can do it because of, as I said, all of the partnership and because all of the hard work that business groups, business organizations all over this county have been working on. So obviously we heard the news from the governor yesterday about some of the changes, but I think what a lot of San Diegans are asking now, and rightfully so, is what does this mean for my business? And as Supervisor Cox just mentioned, it's really going to be up to us to be ready in San Diego County. And that's what these recommendations are all about. Our county has been preparing. Our county is ready. San Diego is ready to recover. And we need to do it safely. And that's where these recommendations come into play in terms of the best and responsible approach. Yesterday, Supervisor Cox and I and the task force did introduce the guidelines that were developed by the Recovery Advisory Group to do reopening strategically, safely, not only in general categories, but also some specific categories that in some very diverse industries. It's a strategy to make sure that San Diego has a head start when that statewide order is lifted. And a lot of the goals and recommendations are applicable to any business. And I think that that's what's probably most important. So not only those businesses that may be in phase 1, 2, or 3, but restaurants, hair and nail salons, any business that is preparing in San Diego for the time that we can open. And I think I should state again that these recommendations were all developed by the men and women in our business community. They have two primary goals. How do they keep their customers safe? And how do they keep their employees safe? Because in order to sustain a reopening, both of those things have to be front and center. And that's what the recovery group was tasked for. And so this group has been, as I mentioned, was bipartisan. It was binational, small business organizations, large organizations, labor organizations, thousands of representatives, our African-American, Asian-American, and Hispanic business communities, and from all parts of the county. We really wanted to ensure that this was a county-wide effort, North County, East County, South County, and across the board. And so as we look at the work that this committee has done, which dovetails into the framework which the board is considering today, the issues of employee health, issues of safe worker entrances, workplace distancing and conditions, employee training and compliance, and of course, enhanced cleaning and sanitation. And a lot of specific recommendations and details on all of that. So I want to thank Chairman Cox and Supervisor Fletcher for bringing this item forward. And I want to thank Supervisors Jacob, Desmond, and Gaspar for all of the work that they have been doing countywide with our business community to get us to this point that San Diego County is ready. I can tell you I'm on statewide calls often with mayors across the state. The relationship and the partnership that we have between our county and our cities here is unique. That is one that has put us in a very good position to be ready. And that's what today's item is all about. And I particularly want to thank all of our business groups and organizations who really have jumped in with both feet, who took this very seriously. And all of the conference calls that were had, knowing how do we do this together with many differing views and opinions, but as I said, one overriding goal of consensus, which is how do we do it safely? So I would just say in conclusion, as all of us constantly remind everybody, we're not out of the woods yet, but what we are doing in San Diego is working. We are headed in the right direction because of our partnership and because of all of the hard work that we are doing in San Diego County. So I'm happy to help present these recommendations from the Recovery Advisory Group. I want to thank all of the men and women that helped put it together. I will conclude where I began, which is that San Diego is ready. San Diego is ready to open for business and ready to do so safely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, for joining us for this particular item and for your input and the great job you've done in helping to put together that Recover Task Force. I think they come up with some great recommendations that we certainly look forward to having considered for implementation as we get back to business. I would acknowledge that we have, I believe, 24 speakers at this point on this particular item. And what I would propose to do is to go ahead and ask the clerk to start calling up those speakers. And then once we get done with the speakers, we'll get into the board discussion. So if the clerk of the board would please introduce those speakers. And again, we would ask you to please keep your comments to within 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will also note that for this item, we received 36 e-comments on this item. We have about 11 of the 24 confirmed speakers on the line to speak on this item. And as a reminder for the callers, if you do not wish to speak on this item, please hang up and call back when the board begins discussion of the item you wish to comment on. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted, and each speaker will be asked to state their name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I would remind speakers that they should mute their TV or their live video feed before they begin speaking. I'll turn it over to Assistant Clerk of the Board, Erin Demers, to call our first speaker.
Thank you. Our first speaker is 0117.
Hi there, my name is Robin Good and I live in the city of San Marcos. I've actually been working with about 30 pastors in the area, working on proposals to write up for safety measures for opening up our churches, and in conjunction with Jim Desmond's office as well. I've also come across during my research from Attorney General in Texas, who actually gave us his proposals that he worked on with the churches there in order to open up safely there. So I'll also be submitting that information. Churches have been actually essential since the beginning, and unfortunately being on the third phase is really causing a lot of suffering in our community. Churches fill in the gap for government. I've talked with some police officers here in the last week. Suicide is up significantly. The therapists are even concluding that that is a fact as well. There has been 6 just in Oceanside last Saturday. There were 6 suicides during one of the lady I spoke with, her own words of the time that she spent on duty. There's also a significant concern for children that are abused. I was abused growing up physically, and my daughter was physically abused and sexually molested as well. And during times of isolation, there's no one that's able to actually call on these kids and their families because they're not being seen. Churches have always been that gap that have come in to be able to help. Drug suicide, as well as alcoholism, are up as well. Now, when we see our community members versus doing live streaming, we're able to see if they're in need. So I'm encouraging you to really think about the statistics that are coming out right now through law enforcement and therapists on the need for churches to be open up. They've always been essential, and they will absolutely help the government. And I know the government is in need.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is last 4 digits 5440.
Yes, my name is Mark Bartleson. I'm a DM with Hobby Lobby in the San Diego County area. First, I'd like to thank Vice Chair Jim Desmond and Crystal Jabara for their help and support during this time. I feel at Hobby Lobby we're an essential business. As we have opened up in other areas of the country, we have seen a great demand for our products and services supporting at-home production of personal protection equipment, distance learning products, and support of home-based businesses. We have already implemented pretty much all the guidelines that you guys have put forth in your business safety framework, and have found that it's working very well. As things progress, of course, we will adopt further best practices to help us to maintain the safety of our employees and our customers, which is, of course, foremost in our minds. But we do believe that we have put many things in place such as social distancing, sneeze guards and protection in those areas, enhanced signing, enhanced cleaning and disinfecting, provide sanitation products for our customers and employee use. We have gone to exclusive operating hours for senior citizens and at-risk population in the early morning. We have limited our hours during the day. We also have the ability to limit store capacity as needed. We have a good response plan in place, and we feel that we are positioned and ready to be able to open up. So I'd like to thank you guys for your time, and hopefully we can get some business going. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2074.
One second. I will be with you in just 1 second. My name is Laurie Butler. I am the executive director of the Oceanside Theater Company. And as arts organizations in San Diego are struggling tremendously after being made to close, the arts community is stepping up, and it's a healthy sign. They're letting us know they are concerned about their arts and cultural organizations' future. When you keep in mind that we're going to be part of phase 4, a lot of people are thinking that these organizations like our theater, Legoland, other places are just there for the entertainment value. And we need to keep in mind that they are there for the economic value that we provide to our community. We're San Diego County. Businesses and restaurants count on tourism and entertainment in the city of Oceanside. For example, at our theater, our guests spend an average of $50 at businesses nearby. Legoland has Sea Life, which is an education center for children, and we put on a community workshop during the summer and for the Boys and Girls Club, which is education. So I'd ask that the County Board of Supervisors look at what they can do to help organizations who are involved in entertainment, arts, and culture. We're going to need to make some changes in our own theater. Right now, we've only got 2 restrooms. We need to expand our restrooms. We need to knock down some walls so people can social distance better. And we're not the only theater company, museum, or place where people are going to gather. So while we're focusing on phase 1, 2, 3, we need to start focusing on phase 4 and getting these places that are so critical to our economy back and into shape in order to do social distancing and safety. I'm sure you're all aware that Oceanside was just recently designated by the state of California as one of 14 arts and cultural districts. And we can, the Oceanside Theater Company and all of us who are part of that.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please wrap up your comments.
We can be a part of bringing the economy back. We're slated for it. We have the support of the state, and don't forget about those of us who are in phase 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3585.
Sigmund. Good morning, supervisors. My name is Mark Sigmund. I'm a resident here in Fallbrook. And the unincorporated county, or the unincorporated part of the county, excuse me, I want to especially thank Supervisor Desmond for his hard work to make sure that our voice is heard. Time after time, we've heard that business owners are not wishing to be defiant. What they're asking for is to have the ingenuity and the freedom to figure this out. We have had some of our largest corporations begin in garages and dorm rooms. Small businesses are hurting, and to allow part of the economy to open while shutting down the other is completely crippling the effects. The lady just expressed the multi-layered approach, or the effects of keeping these businesses closed. The county is depending on the income and the revenue and the taxes that are generated from all of these businesses. But yet everything that we hear from our legislators and everything that we hear from our government is that we're spending. If our businesses operated in that same manner, we are not going to be around to be here for the phase 3 and the phase 4, because the expenses keep piling up without the ability to generate revenue. We are going to be respectful. We are going to adhere to the guidelines and understand that if we need to keep our employees safe and the customers safe, allow us the freedom to figure this out, because there is not one person in this county that wishes to transmit the virus. There's not one person in here that puts anybody unwilling at risk, but what they're trying to do is to provide for their family, provide for their community. And the anger that we're hearing is not because we're feeling like that there's no hope. It's just the fact that we're being prevented from being able to operate and contribute to provide for our families.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to
Contribute
please
to
summarize your
society.
comments.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6571.
Hi, my name is Kelly DeGrassi. I've lived in San Diego for 10 years. I have 3 children, and I'm an adjunct professor of math and physics. I'm calling in today to remind you of the necessity for caring for future generations, even in a time of crisis. Across many cultures and throughout history, it's been considered a virtue to work for posterity's sake. We're now on week 8 of this statewide lockdown, and we cannot underestimate the psychological and emotional damage that this is causing our children and teens. Their new virtual life is in no way a substitute for real life. On a personal note, my 2 daughters are weekly crying over Zoom ballet. My son is a serious gymnast. He was 3rd place in his conference this year in February. And then the state competition was canceled, followed by regionals. He can't bear being out of the gym this long. We all desperately miss our church community. And my college students are completely disengaged as well, as I teach them over Zoom. My experience isn't singular. My friends have all reported marked levels in their children's distress and anxiety. For a full 7 weeks, the children of California have not spent time with other children. They have not practiced the social skills they learn in play. They have not been able to practice kindness and empathy with other children. They're not being adequately educated to grow in knowledge and creativity. Formerly, pediatricians recommended that children spend no more than 2 hours a day looking at screens. Now they're spending innumerable hours looking at screens, doing busy work homework assignments that don't even affect their grades. They're not spending enough time outside making immune system boosting vitamin D in their skin or exercising. The children of California have been robbed of their development for nearly 2 months. And I'm appalled by the ideas floating in reopening schools. Studies have shown that coronavirus transmission is greatly lowered outdoors. Why would we entertain the idea of removing recess and PE?
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to
exactly will
please
that
summarize your
benefit?
comments.
Yes. Just consider the effect on our children. There isn't any evidence that keeping them in one space is effective in fighting coronavirus, but there's plenty of evidence that it's causing damage to them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6072.
Hi, Natalie Bruce, Jargon Encinitas and Ralphie Encinitas. I feel that I can provide a safe environment because I work with clients one-on-one. I have a fully open space, open to the outdoor. I have a plan very detailed on how, people will wear masks. I will disinfect. I will leave time between clients to disinfect the place. So with a one-on-one work, I feel I can totally offer a safe space. And my clients are the kind of people who are educated and who will, who've been isolating and keeping social distances. So I feel totally safe that I can reopen anytime.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is 7336.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on. My name is Mark Widows. My wife and I have a small furniture store in North County. We have a little bit different business model. We've operated by appointment for 17 years. And we've been required to close, even though we could easily have been operating under our normal guidelines, plus masks, plus all the other safety features that the state has mandated. We could easily be operating that way this entire time, but we've been required to close. The business is struggling because of this, and we are absolutely ready to go. We don't want to have to borrow money. We don't want to add to debt. We don't want to add to the national debt through the SBA. We don't want to add any more problems to our economic situation in this country. And our business is absolutely ready to go. We can operate very easily under all of the state mandated guidelines for safety. And so we're just asking the opportunity to do that. That's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7359.
Good morning. My name is Russell Zayas. My wife and I are the owners of the Smooth Bar, a specialty salon here in San Diego. Hello to everyone on the phone, and thank you for allowing us time to discuss our point of view and hopefully give a little background on our segment you may not be aware of. Let me start off with a personal note by saying this entire situation is incredibly stressful. Revenue going to zero is only part of that stress. The vast majority is the political rhetoric, divide, and confusion supplied by our elected leaders. On our business, I would like to say that after following the news, listening to our medical leaders, reading the articles, and taking all that information into account when we simply go to buy groceries or things at our local Home Depot, that our salon is ready to open our doors and safely and responsibly. The layout of our salon allows for the closure of 30% of capacity while creating the 6 feet of distance between everyone in the salon. The obvious caveat to this is where client and stylists are concerned. Our plan is to provide face shields like what you see at the dentist to our employees for use during treatments to clients. Also, when allowed, we will close our waiting area by servicing appointments only and refusing walk-in clients to further reduce the number of people in the salon. Every employee of ours has multiple masks and gloves waiting for their return to work, as well as masks for every client. We have a table that's ready to go with hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes the second we are free to open our doors. Our business is ready to go. Our employees, our clients, ourselves are all on board with returning to our environment. We keep constant contact with our staff to keep their spirits up and brief them on our plans. We are ready. We only require the authority to open. In closing, I would like to remind you or inform you of regulations for our industry. Sanitization is the #1 theme to gaining state cosmetology license for every stylist. The State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology weighs our ability to keep a sanitary environment exclusively, not our ability to give a good haircut or service. With that in mind, it is our firm belief that we and our employees are in a far better position to supply a sanitary and safe environment than many other businesses out there allowed to remain open. A safe and sanitary environment is not just what we strive for, it is mandated,
Sir, I'm going to ask you to
regulated, and
please summarize your
enforced by the
comments.
state. That's it. I thank you for your time and appreciate the forum to voice our point of view.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7949.
Hi, good morning. I am calling from San Diego, Rancho Bernardo. We have an early childhood school, and we have been closed now for a month and a half.
Ma'am,
Planning to reopen.
If you could please state your name for the audio record.
Oh, sure. My name is Mazi Irani.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got me all passionate going. We are planning to reopen in June, and in collaboration with many other schools, find it really unrealistic with the policies and the procedures that licensing and health is putting forth, without thinking about children, their emotions, and how they're going through this whole change, and without thinking about the families that are participating in this. So I guess the outcome of my call is that I'm asking for the policymakers to ensure that you're in consult with the early childhood schools and owners that are actually operating this. If we were to abide by the regulations that are set right now, we are not going to be sustaining our business. Wearing a mask for a teacher in front of a child is extremely traumatic. It's not possible. To have a child wear a mask is impossible. I can't even keep a bow on my little one's hair. To keep a social distance when you have young children that are learning to socialize is impossible. So the outcome of my call is to ensure that you're in consult with the educators, with the professionals, and the owners that are passionate and running this field to open San Diego safely. We can still stay safe. We can use our common sense, a lot of precautive measures, but a lot of the protocols that are coming are just surface level protocols to just abide by some regulations. That doesn't make sense when you're working with children and teachers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8045.
Hello, my name is Joe Irvin. I'm a small business owner and a member of the Escondido Salon and Spa Business Association. I've been a licensed nail technician since 1988. I own and operate My Penny Lane, a small two-person salon in Escondido, California. Many of my friends are salon owners as well. We are a low-risk setting because, whether big or small, we all have hours of training in sanitation and proper hygiene protocols. There are few other industries other than healthcare that are as well equipped and trained. We maintain licenses and certifications and favor continuing education. We are governed by our California State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. We are subject to and cooperate with random, thorough inspections. Our clients count on our adherence to these rules to keep them safe. Hand washing prior to any service is an example of a protocol already in practice. Working one-to-one by appointment is another. Most of us are self-employed persons that have never used or wanted unemployment insurance payments. We want to work. Prior to this event, I was maintaining a full clientele. They are anxiously waiting on me to be able to care for them again. I've maintained problems of the feet within my scope for my people for years, a service that is seen as essential to good health. Diabetics often don't feel a small wound that needs to be treated before it becomes infected. I know stylists that have spotted skin cancers and referred clients to their physicians. How would you know you had a spot on your scalp? Our businesses are more than making pretty, although that's something we do so well. With our knowledge and experience and additional safety protocols, masks, and so on, we know we can get back to business safely. Hundreds of us have signed pledges to operate within new guidelines thanks to Supervisor Desmond. Our aim is to be included in the Phase 2 opening. We have cooperated with our local government and we want your support. The Escondido Salon and Spa Association is counting on your vote to reopen business by May 15th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9353.
Hi, I'm Howard Heimson, owner of Lawrence Furniture. I want to thank the county supervisors for allowing me a few minutes to speak to you as a small business. I do respect the governor's effort to keep us all safe. My family and I are a part of the San Diego community. We care about the health and safety of everyone. I do, however, disagree with some of the handling of which businesses should be allowed to stay open. We're a small family business that goes back to 1937. We have 2 retail locations and a warehouse building. Our stores have been completely shut down since March 20th, almost 7 weeks now. We have large stores, large buildings. To put it in perspective, they're about 1.5 to twice the size of a typical Trader Joe's store. Prior to March of this year, our 2 stores on average would have 2 to 6 employees working in them at any given time. And in an 8-hour day, we would see approximately 10 customer groups walk through the door. That's anywhere from 1 to maybe 10 or 15 or 20 people in an 8-hour day. We do not require a lot of people coming in to be successful. These are large locations with very few bodies in them at any given time. Our stores were asked to close on March 20th because we were deemed to not be selling essential goods. Sadly, many of them and most of the businesses that were deemed to be selling essential goods are large big box retailers that by their very nature required large crowds of people to be successful. However, we too sell essential products. We sell home office desks and other supplies. We sell mattresses and lighting and seating products that provide health and wellness to people, yet we were not allowed to be open. So most of our staff was furloughed and sent home on March 20th, while big box stores were handled shovels to bury us. We were forced to shut down and big box retailers were allowed to stay open. We all know
Sir, I'm
the
going to ask you to please
designation of
summarize your comments.
Okay, I'm going to skip to the end here then. I understand that this Friday there will be some retail possibly allowed to be open. I do not hear any mention of furniture stores. These are the safest places people can be. This is our 83rd year in business. Please don't make it our last. We need your help, and I thank you for your time and listening to me.
Thank you, and that concludes public testimony on this item.
Okay, well, we appreciate all of the input that we've received. Believe me, I think every member of this Board of Supervisors has been diligently working to try to make sure we can get businesses open up in the San Diego region as soon as possible. Again, we're, don't want to keep repeating the same phrase, but this framework that Supervisor Fletcher and I have brought forward is really dealing with how we will reopen business in San Diego. The when is going to be dictated by the governor, but I think we've all heard some encouraging news yesterday in his press conference that he's anticipating that some businesses will be able to open as early as Friday. Excuse me. So what I would like to do is to make a motion to accept the recommendations that are on the board letter, which is to adopt the reopen San Diego business safety framework, to direct the chief administrative officer to update the framework as necessary to correspond with the work done by the business groups, including the recovery advisory group, and other input that we've received on this testimony today. And also, I know we received a letter, I think all of us received, from a group of business folks that have some very good recommendations. And that includes representatives from Downtown Partnership, Building Industry Association, California Apartment Association, BOMA, and North County Economic Development Council, California Restaurant Association, and North Park Main Street. They have some very good recommendations. In addition to those recommendations, I want to acknowledge that I've had some discussions along the way with some of the tribal governments. I know they are looking forward to reopening at the appropriate time. And what I would suggest we do is we take the framework that has been laid out here with this item, certainly appreciating all the comments, and that we accept comments and refer these comments to the public health officer for consideration when she updates the public health order. And that would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Supervisor Jacob?
Thank you. A few comments. I want to first thank you and Supervisor Fletcher and also Mayor Faulkner for bringing this item forward today, and all the work that you have done day in and day out on this particular issue, but more importantly today on businesses reopening. This is a good move and a right move in the direction. In my communications with my business community, as well as others in the community, they're very anxious, not just to be safe, but to make sure they can go into businesses, have businesses reopen, but to be safe in going into those businesses. I firmly believe that I would liken what we've been in the past month to a training session. And I think everybody in San Diego at this point has proven that they have passed the training test. They know about this virus. They know how to protect themselves and protect others. And that's why we're able as a region to move in the right direction. Having said that, I do think as we move forward, we need to put two things into perspective. And one is common sense. I think some common sense needs to be entered into the equation as we move forward and open up our businesses. Also, personal responsibility. How about a little trust in the people in San Diego? I think they've earned their trust. In that regard, I think the framework that you put before and the motion, I wholeheartedly support. I think this is a great step for San Diego County in moving toward the reopening of our businesses as safely as possible. Safety is key. As I stated in my letter to Governor Newsom last week regarding an initial blanketed statewide beach closure, it is important to give local jurisdictions and our local public health officials the flexibility to make decisions based on regional data, plans, and resources that are available. Residents and businesses have made significant sacrifices and demonstrated the willingness to do their part to prevent the spread of this disease. And as some businesses are allowed to open back up, I have confidence in the ability of San Diegans to follow the safety guidelines, precautions, and the sanitation procedures in a continued effort to flatten the curve and stay safe. The framework that has been brought forward is an excellent foundation, and I'd like to make certain that we share it with the governor. But I would also like to communicate with the government that the governor, that we have an outstanding and committed county team that is working on this crisis, and that the team has the ability to make the decisions that are best for our region, of course, under the local public health orders and also under the governor's orders. We cannot, nor should we, ignore those orders. So I would like to suggest an additional to the motion, if I may, and that would be to direct the CAO to draft a letter to be signed by the chairman in order to share the plan before the board today and to formally ask the governor for total local control with decisions related to COVID-19 and reopening businesses. And of course, that would be data-driven and also driven and consistent with our local public health officer. So if you could accept that, I think we should pass that on to the governor.
I would be happy to include that in the motion. Is that okay with the seconder of the motion?
Sure.
That was yes, Supervisor Fletcher?
Yes.
Okay. And again, Supervisor Jacob, I think that's a very good suggestion. You know, we did have a scare last week when we thought our efforts to reopen the beaches were going to be put to the side by action of the governor to close all the beaches in California. But I think we made a very persuasive argument that San Diego citizens have been by and large very responsible in following the directives of the public health officer. And I know the governor in that particular press conference on Thursday called out San Diego for doing a great job. I think he called us out again yesterday for being an example of responsible implementation of public health directives. So I totally concur with your addition to the motion, and we will be happy to include that. Supervisor Gaspar.
Thank you, Chairman. 5-0 vote today by this board to get our businesses reopened in San Diego, I think would be a welcome birthday gift to our birthday boy here, the Vice Chairman, Jim Desmond. Happy birthday. Our business community is one that I'm extremely proud of. It's been a privilege over the past few weeks to work across so many different business sectors and learn about the day-to-day operations in place in our business community, to get safety protocols and plans in place to demonstrate to the governor of California that San Diego led in its response to this crisis. San Diego will lead again in its response out of this crisis because we're prepared. We're prepared with those plans. And I think we can make a compelling case to the governor. We need that local control. Really pleased to hear those words out of the governor's mouth during his press conference yesterday, that he intends to give us that local control. And I know we have a talented team. We have a committed business community, and our community that has invested so much here 51 days later. I want to acknowledge the challenge that has been before our business community. I'm a business owner, as many of you know, and even if you're an essential business, you've likely taken a significant hit because it's not business as usual, normal operations. It's likely that your business has suffered a 60-70% loss operating in this new normal, which I will only acknowledge is a temporary new normal. We can do this safely. We can get our businesses back open. A lot of businesses were waiting for PPP loans. I worked extensively with the restaurant community yesterday because there are limitations to that Paycheck Protection Program. So even if they are fortunate enough to get one of those loans, part of the problem is that for our restaurant sector hit really hard. It's likely that they had to lay off a number of their employees from the get-go, keeping kind of a skeleton crew together to run those takeout operations. They're not able to take advantage of that stimulus program the way it was intended. So there are a number of changes that need to happen, the local, state, federal level. Our goal now is to protect our businesses, to help them reopen. I'm very grateful to have worked alongside you, Vice Chairman Jim Desmond, with so many businesses. I'm proud of our community and its response. Again, it's time to lead. We can do so with local control. I wanted to make a couple comments on the business safety framework. I know that once we walk away from a document like this, all that's left are the words on the page. And there were a couple of things that I wanted to point out. First, under the employee safety, there's an item that states personal protection equipment must be provided at a level appropriate to employee job duties. I have to say that I'm a bit concerned about that type of must language because, as you know, PPE is not widely available. It's still the mindset of the CDC that we reserve that PPE for our healthcare workers. So I am concerned about that language being there. I think the most important thing to acknowledge with our business community is they need to meet CDC guidelines and the public health order guidelines. So if you're operating a healthcare clinic at this time, you have PPE requirements through the CDC. But if we just put that out there for all businesses to adhere to with that PPE, I think it may be a mistake to have that type of language. The other thing that I noticed under the physical distancing, it states that physical distancing of a minimum of 6 feet must be maintained between employee workstations, counters, and aisles. The trouble we're going to run into here are some of the heavy hit small mom and pop stores that do not have the ability to have 6 feet of space in their aisles. However, they can come up with a creative business strategy. I've seen a lot of one-way markings happening in your smaller stores. This could happen, but if our language is restrictive like this, I'm worried that mom and pop stores that do not have the ability to come up with 6 feet of space in a single aisle might be hurt. I also think that I am a little confused under the general business practice and communications. We threw in a line there about non-essential travel being minimized and adherence to CDC guidelines regarding quarantine following travel implemented. It just seemed a little out of context here, so I'm not sure how that's relevant to the business safety framework. Obviously, that's something that's happening widespread, but those are my comments on the framework and some things that I think we need to be mindful of as we try to get our businesses reopen. Again, want to send a strong message out to the community that I'm here and available. If you have a business that needs some help putting together that safety protocol or want it reviewed, I am happy to help work through that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Gaspar. And I would acknowledge that this is really a starting point. It's a framework. By taking the action, the recommendations that are included in the board letter, this will be referred to our public health officers and the additional input. I imagine these guidelines are going to be massaged quite a bit before we take a final action on, or the public health director gives a final action. Again, we know the governor's going to come out with some guidelines on Thursday. At least that's what he said yesterday. So I imagine some of his guidelines may be superseded by what we've got here. So this is a starting point. We know it's going to be massaged with input from the Recover Task Force and from the other groups that have provided comments and the speakers we've had today. With that, I realize we're kind of in a new territory with these virtual meetings, and there's been some confusions in regards to when you call in. I believe we have 2 additional public speakers that wish to speak on this item, and I'll ask Mr. Potter to go ahead and introduce them at this time. And again, keep their comments to within 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this is the County Council. Just one thing I do want to clarify. You had mentioned about something about it bringing this back to the board. the intent was to get the input and then not necessarily bring it back to the board just because of the fact that we were going to let the public health officer finalize this so that we could be nimble and be able to address things as they come up and not have to return to the board each time. Are you changing that direction?
No, that's the intent. We realize the public health officer is going to have to make the final decisions based upon the science and the information that's available. But these are some guidelines, if you will, that we'd like the public health director to consider, along with the additional input from these different groups. Okay, if the clerk could go ahead and introduce the other two speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a caller with last four digits 7953. If you could please state your name for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hello?
Hi there, we can hear you. You can proceed.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Karen Cicinella. I work with Dot to Dot and Rancho Bernardo as a creative development director. My concern is that tuition-based childcare is being asked to operate at half capacity, that without childcare, that the people can't get back to work. They won't, if they don't have a safe place to put their children, and being asked to operate at half capacity is spiraling these programs into default on their rent and mortgages and bills. And in the process of that, they are going to shut their doors. And with we need help in either financial assistance or subsidies or even loans. But loans mean that we're going to have to raise tuition in order to stay in business, and at a time when it's difficult for people to come up with the funds to do so. I would like to ask that you take that into consideration when you're requiring schools to operate at half capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no other callers on the line right now who had specifically requested to speak on item 14.
Okay, and I believe the Chief Administrative Officer had some comments she wished to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. To address Supervisor Gaspar's comments, we can certainly meet with the public health officer after this meeting and look at that language. We also do have a safe reopening plan, and I just want to remind businesses that what the framework does is it gives you some things to address as you develop your own safe reopening plan. There is a template that will be posted as soon as this meeting is over, assuming you adopt the framework, and be available on our website for you all to begin your safe reopening plans. We're calling them the SRPs. Each business will be required to complete that and post it in your own facility. It does not need to come back to the county for approval, and it gives you the flexibility to determine how you will address those critical components of your own business, which you know far better than us in terms of making sure your employees and your customers are safe. The other comment, Supervisor Gaspar, I just wanted to let you know that the reason the travel was put in there is there's a lot of businesses, not necessarily small businesses, but many businesses that have travel as a major component of their daily work environment. And so that is to address those folks that spend a lot of time on the road, and so that businesses consider using Zoom or other methodologies to conduct those kinds of meetings, as opposed to having people on airplanes and then having to quarantine when they come back. So that was the intent of that in the framework. I just wanted to clarify that. And lastly, I just want to let you know that the framework is just that, it is a framework. The document that will actually be required to be followed is the order. So we will certainly take all of the inputs that we get from all the different organizations and businesses as we develop the final language that will be in the order when that is updated and posted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Are there any additional comments from my colleagues?
Yes, Chairman Cox, I'd like to make, thank you. Well, and like everyone, I'd like to congratulate and thank Chairman Cox and Fletcher for bringing this forward. I think it was, it was much needed, and I appreciate the framework, and I realize it's a work in progress. Also, Supervisor Jacob, I really appreciate your addition to the motion, adding on there that we want total local control in San Diego County for opening up businesses. I think that was great. And Supervisor Gaspar, thank you very much for the birthday wishes. It's a birthday boy at my advanced age, so I appreciate that. But I don't know who's hammering. Anyway, yeah. I would like to comment. I thanks Helen for saying we're going to put this, the form up on the website. I'm just also curious if we can also have a call in or an email for questions at the county, because our offices, my offices, we get a lot of phone calls about what about this situation, what about that situation, and we've got the 211 and it's primarily set up as it should be for more of the healthcare issues. We need I think a central command or some sort of ombudsman or some sort of person within the county that can field some of these questions. Our offices are happy to do it, but we don't always have the resources. And so I would like to have that as part of for moving forward, to have our staff taken care of. And then also we're getting a lot of questions on what stage am I in as far as the businesses are concerned. It says, I don't know if I'm in stage 2, I don't know if I'm in stage 3 or stage 4. Some of the guidelines from the state in their stages, it's pretty vague. I'd like to have our interpretation of what businesses are in those stages. If we were to, get that autonomous total local control, what's our interpretation of those stages and how, and this is primarily for the businesses so they can anticipate, it won't be written in stone, but if it's anticipated of the potential of being in these phases or stages so that they know, okay, it's going to be 6 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it may be. I think there needs to be some clarification there. What I'm hearing from from businesses are, what are the guidelines? What are, where am I? Where do I sit? Am I really in stage 4 or stage 2? So that kind of clarification, I think, is going to help a lot and relieve a lot of anxiety out there. If we can get an ombudsman and then what's our interpretation of those stages, I think would be very helpful for the businesses. So I don't think that has to be part of the motion, but I'd like for staff direction to go to take those up so we can have direction for the businesses.
Supervisor Desmond, first off, happy birthday. And secondly, I think your suggestion has a lot of merit. So I would hope that the Chief Administrative Officer would update our website in regards to letting people know where they can call for basic information. And I think having a phone number, an ombudsman that could be one point of contact for businesses, I think would be very, very helpful. It's probably a lot better than calling 5 different supervisors' office and not having everybody maybe have the most current information. So I would hope that the CAO can accommodate that request. Is there any further discussion? If not, we do have a motion. Would the clerk like to go ahead and restate the motion with the additional recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is as recommended, and for the Chief Administrative Officer to accept the comments and the input from the various associations that were mentioned and refer the comments to the Public Health Officer when updating the Public Health Officer. Additionally, to direct the CAO to draft a letter from the chair to share the plan and formally ask the governor for total local control with decisions related to COVID-19 and reopening businesses.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on now to item number 1, which is to receive the update on the COVID-19 response, ratify actions and authorize any other action necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, any member of the public that has requested to speak on this item, please dial in the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Now, I would acknowledge that we have 91 speakers at this point. that wish to speak on this item, but I do know that we have a staff presentation. So I'm going to turn it over first to our Chief Administrative Officer for that staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because of the number of speakers, I'm going to skip my introductory comments and jump right into a rather comprehensive briefing. So Don, take it away.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, Chairman Cox and members of the board. Since we last came to your board on April 21st, our efforts to slow the spread for COVID-19 continue. Here are the items we will cover in today's update. We continue the command and control of our county response to COVID-19 through the Incident Command at our Emergency Operations Center 7 days a week, and we continue to increase the number of personnel dedicated to the effort to support. We continue to focus all aspects of the response to prevent the spread of COVID-19 within our community, including partnerships, supply acquisition, and prioritization of response strategies. Early on, we embedded the Medical Operations Center, or MOC, into the Incident Command structure to ensure an aligned, efficient, and expedited response. The MOC works to support the people and organizations that are working on the front lines of this response by distributing local assets and medical supplies, including PPE, by maximizing state and federal stockpile distributions, and sourcing directly from manufacturers. We are ensuring our region has sufficient inventory to meet day-to-day operations. In ongoing discussions concerning PPE, there have been concerns about the adequacy of PPE for our employees and the healthcare facilities in the region. Let's take a closer look at PPE, starting with our county employees. Upon receiving PPE requests from our county team members, the MOC, in conjunction with leadership from each requesting facility or department, performed an assessment to determine the appropriate type and amount of PPE to meet the specific need. You'll see here we have provided hundreds of thousands of pieces of PPE to county staff, including over 27,000 N95 respirators and over 116,000 face masks and shields and over 4,000 gowns. Because of our MOC's ongoing communication and careful real-time review of departmental requests, our employees are getting the appropriate type and quantity of PPE to do their job on a day-to-day basis. As for our healthcare partners, the MOC participates in daily communications with healthcare systems to ensure we are fully aware of the needs in our region. In this chart, you'll see the amount of PPE quantity requested from the state far exceeds the quantity that was actually distributed by the state for our healthcare partners. Our MOC director, Rob Sills, and I have reviewed local requisition data going back to the 2nd of February. Based on data generated by our national best practices on burn rates and commensurate with the number of positive cases in our region, our healthcare partners are getting the appropriate level of PPE for their current need today. But let me be clear. Do we have the PPE inventory we want? No. Are we continuing to aggressively seek additional inventory? Yes. Do we have what we need to treat the number of positive cases for our region on a daily basis? Yes. Going on to our next slide, if I have a request, you want us to say what is actually on the slide? Oh, MOC, I'm sorry. Medical Operations Center is our MOC. Next slide, we will hear, returning to our agenda for today, you will hear updates on our local public health data from Dr. Wooten, receive a status of how our regional efforts are measuring up to the federal and state guidelines for reopening our communities. And to that end, we'll outline our priorities for testing, tracing, and treatment, T3, to ensure reopening can occur as soon as practicable. Nick Machione will focus on our response strategies to enhance T3 in the region. Nick will be executing this strategy within the Incident Command structure. We'll also have just an quick update for our outreach sector activities. We continue to have 20 to 25 outreach events occurring each week, providing a coordinated response to outreach and information sharing across the region. The reason I mention this is we will be using this resource as yet another opportunity to promote our enhanced testing strategy to ensure our efforts to reach maximum amount of people. We'll also be joined today by our our Incident Command Finance Chief, Andy Pease, to discuss the CARES Act, and our Chief Financial Officer, Tracy Sandoval, to provide an economic update. But we're going to begin today's update with a special guest, Dr. Natasha Martin, professor in the Division of Infectious Diseases and Global Public Health at the University of San Diego. Dr. Martin's expertise in epidemic modeling focuses on the development of simulation models to understand disease epidemics and to predict the impact of prevention interventions. She has been modeling the impact of our non-pharmaceutical interventions on COVID-19 transmission and the mortality rate in San Diego County. Dr. Martin, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Today, as mentioned, I'll be talking about how we're using epidemic modeling to estimate the impact of social distancing interventions on SARS-CoV-2 transmission and mortality in San Diego County. Next slide. So you'll have likely already seen this figure widely circulated in the media, which portrays the impact of social distancing on flattening the epidemic curve. Epidemic models like those that I'll discuss today were used to generate these predictions, which show that without protective measures, we could have a peak in cases and mortality that would far exceed our healthcare system capacities. But with intervention, we could reduce that peak, pulling us within the healthcare system capacity, but lengthening the course of the epidemic. Next slide. So a key element in discussing how the impact of interventions could reduce transmission is the concept of a reproductive number. The reproductive number is really important when we're understanding transmission as it was happening early in the epidemic and as it's happening now. So you may have heard what is called the basic reproduction number, or R0, which is the average number of infections caused by a single individual in a fully susceptible population. So if you look here on the bottom left-hand of the slide, if R0 is 1, then each initial infection leads to just one more infection, which itself leads to one more. And so indicating that the transmission chain is sustained but not growing. Whereas on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that if R0 is 4, the initial infection results in 4 secondary infections, which each result in 4 more infections. And so you can see the kind of epidemic exponential growth that we have seen with COVID. So it's important to know that R0 is not fixed for, oops, sorry, if you could go back. It's important to know that R0 is not fixed for a specific epidemic, and that it can vary through settings. And this transmission rate can also vary through time. And that's what we call the effective reproduction number, which is the number of infections caused by a single individual at a given point in time. And that effective reproduction number, or RT, lets us know how transmission is being sustained throughout the epidemic and as we may have implemented infectious disease prevention interventions. Next slide. So today we'll talk about 2 key questions that we've explored with the epidemic modeling. Firstly, what is the effective reproduction number, or RT, in San Diego? And what was it prior to social distancing interventions? And then using that information, we can ask how many deaths have we averted through these social distancing interventions? Next slide. So to answer these questions, we adapted an epidemic model from a world-leading university research group in Imperial College London. And this model simulates the SARS-CoV-2 epidemic based on what we see in observed daily deaths. This is important because it's not based on cases which are highly sensitive to testing patterns, but instead observes deaths. And it looks at the time trajectory of deaths before and after social distancing interventions. The model estimates the joint effects of social distancing interventions across 14 European countries on the effective reproduction number, which helps us understand how social distancing has reduced transmission. The model incorporates different types of social distancing interventions you can see here: encouragement of social distancing, closure of schools, case-based isolation, banning of public events, and lockdowns. Next slide. So the first thing we did was adapt the model to include San Diego and Los Angeles counties. Now, at the heart of this model, it simulates infections, and it simulates infections and how they result in subsequent deaths, such that the number of deaths that we see today is related to the number of infections which occurred at a previous point in time. Next slide. To simulate this, it requires input data, and the data that it takes into this model are the observed deaths over time, interventions, dates that these occurred in different settings, the specific population age structure in a setting, infection fatality rates, information on contact mixing, time between the onset of symptoms in a primary case and the onset of symptoms in a secondary case, which we call the serial interval, and clinical features such as the time from infection to symptoms and time from symptoms to death. And it takes all this information that we know about the biology and the epidemiology of transmission, combined with what we see observed, to generate an estimate of the reproduction number. Next slide. So it synthesizes these data using the observed data in each setting. And so in each setting that we simulate, it estimates the effective reproduction number over time. Next slide. And then critically, by assuming that intervention effects are shared across all the settings, it generates an estimate of the basic reproduction number, or basically what transmission would have been like prior to any social distancing interventions. Next slide. So here, a model is really only as good as its predictions. And here what I wanted to show you is the predictions of the model estimates in terms of the cumulative number of deaths over time compared to what we actually saw in San Diego County. So the model predictions are in blue, and the blue shading around this blue line indicates the uncertainty in the model predictions. And the vertical bars are what we saw in terms of cumulative deaths. And you can see that the model fits well to the observed deaths over time. Next slide. Now, based on this calibrated simulation to San Diego County, the model predicts that before social distancing intervention, the basic reproduction number, or R0, could have been between 3 and 6, with a mean value of 4.7, indicating that on average, in the beginning of the epidemic, each new infection resulted in 4.7 subsequent infections. Now, as I mentioned before, R0 will vary by setting, but this estimate is consistent with revised estimates that we have from Wuhan, which indicate that R0 was 5.7 before their lockdown. Next slide. So the model now predicts that the current reproduction number in San Diego County is likely between 0.6 and 1, with a mean estimate of 0.8, meaning that each infection likely results in less than one new infection. This is really good news and shows the substantial impact that social distancing interventions have likely had on reducing ongoing transmission in the community. Next slide. Now, the second question we wanted to ask was how many deaths have been prevented because of these interventions? And to do that, we generate predictions using the epidemic model I described before by assuming an R0 of 4.7, as our model indicates it was likely prior to the introduction of social distancing interventions, and assuming that no social distancing interventions occurred after that time. So all the data inputs are the same as I've shown you before. Next slide. Now, this slide shows the cumulative number of deaths estimated with our no intervention scenario, shown here in red, with the model predicting that between 6,000 and 18,000 deaths could have occurred as of the end of April in San Diego County without social distancing, with a point estimate of just over 12,500. So as you can see, there is uncertainty in this estimate, but regardless indicates that many thousands of lives have been saved compared to the only 128 observed deaths that we documented as of April 27th when this curve was simulated. Next slide. So this is all extremely encouraging, but I want to leave you with one note of caution. This simulation shows the predicted daily number of deaths if we were to lift all the restrictions and behavior were to return back to normal as it was pre-COVID at the end of this week. The simulation shows that it would take a few weeks for these changes to lead to observed changes in deaths because of the lag time between infections and death. But the deaths could quickly escalate, resulting in several hundred deaths per day by the beginning of June and quickly rising higher than this. So as we move into the era of relaxing of interventions, we need to remain vigilant and ready to quickly respond to an expanding epidemic. And yes, although what I'm showing on this slide is a worst case scenario, assuming that all behavior were to immediately go back to the way it was before the epidemic, As I mentioned earlier, currently we are only just below a reproduction number of 1. So even relatively small changes in behavior could push us above that threshold and result in an expanding epidemic. Next slide. So overall, our modeling indicates that social distancing interventions have prevented between 6,000 and 18,000 deaths in San Diego County as of the end of April. The effective reproduction number is currently likely just below 1, which is a great thing and means that we are controlling the outbreak, but there is little room for error. This number could easily go below 1 with above 1 with relaxed social distancing measures and could result in a severe rebound in a relatively short period of time, and I'm talking about a matter of weeks. As such, we need to remain vigilant, ensure widespread testing and contact tracing, and to monitor the developing situation, particularly in the border region, closely. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Wooten to take us through our public health data.
Thank you, Don. The number of cases of COVID-19 in San Diego County continues to grow. Much of this is being driven by increases in laboratory testing that is being promoted throughout our region. This table provides a summary of the total positive cases with a breakdown by age, hospitalization, intensive care unit, admissions, and death. As of yesterday, the county has a total of 4,020 positive cases. The average age range is from 3 months to 100 years of age. The demographics remain constant. 51% of our total cases are between the ages of 20 to 49 years of age. The total number of cases are represented by 49% female, 51% male. 842 or 21% of the total number have been hospitalized, and of the hospitalized number, 271 or 32% of those hospitalized have been admitted to the ICU. And unfortunately, 144 or 3.6% of the total of our cases have died. Although not shown on this slide, we provide daily updates on the cases by race and ethnicity. Hispanics or Latinos have both the highest number of cases and the highest incident rate. In this group, there were 1,765 cases, which is approximately 55% of the total number of cases, with a rate of 153 per 1,000 population. Whites had the second highest number of cases with 948, or 29% of the total number of cases, and a rate of 62 per 100,000 population. African Americans had 147 cases, or 4.6% of the cases, which is the number of African Americans represented 4.6% of our total population. However, they rank second behind Hispanic and Latinos with a rate of 99.5 per 100,000 population. All of this information is posted on our coronavirus-sd.com website daily and is broken down by cities, zip codes, and race and ethnicity. On this next slide, we show the epidemiological curve, also known as the EPI curve, ending May 3rd. This graphic shows cases by onset of symptoms. The area under the red bar is provided because of the 14-day incubation periods, and this reminds us that we could see additional cases that are under this bar. This is again through May 3rd. If we prepared this for through May 4th or 5th, we would see that the bar has moved over. So the peak for April 20th is actually the highest peak in this graphic in terms of daily cases by onset of symptom. So it may appear that we have peaked at this point, but we must continue to monitor the number of cases that are coming in this week. So it is very vital by the end of the week, where we will be with overall number of cases. On April 16th, 2020, the White House released their guidelines on opening up America again, which outlines a gradual reopening of the United States economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is based on a gating criteria using 5 metrics across 3 criteria areas. In addition to the federal guidelines, in order for San Diego County to move forward with loosening current orders and recommendations, we must also align with the governor's 6 indicators found in the governor's or California's roadmap to modify the stay-at-home order. And I will review both federal and state metrics shortly. The White House guidelines focus on 3 main criteria areas with related metrics. These include symptoms, cases, and hospitals. In review of these gating criteria, I will provide evidence of the county's progress for each of the 5 metrics across these 3 criteria areas. In the next slide, 4 of the 5 metrics have been met, and I will review each now and provide additional information for the 5th, which is related to testing. And as I will provide, we have met the first round goal even there. Under the symptoms criteria, we have met both metrics 1 and 2, and these include a downward trajectory of influenza-like illnesses and COVID-like syndrome cases within a 14-day period. In review of the next slide, you can see that we have clearly met both of these metrics, with each being at 2% as of May 1st. Going to the next slide, under the cases criteria, only one of the 2 metrics provided must be met. And we have selected the metric which is the downward trajectory of positive tests as a percent of the total tests within a 14-day period. And this metric has been met. In the next slide, we show, the graphic shows a downward trajectory of the percentage of positive tests out of the total number of tests performed. But we must and will continue to closely monitor these metrics. The last of the 3 criteria is hospitals. And under hospitals, there are 2 metrics, and I'll review the first, which is related to our crisis care model. We continue to meet this metric and do not currently need to utilize a crisis care model, although we have a committee working on that effort, and we have also received guidance from the state, and will align our efforts with state guidance. This metric, however, is very important and impacted by COVID-19 activity in Baja California, so we will continue to closely monitor hospital capacity. The next 2 slides gives additional information as it relates to hospital capacity, and this information is reported by local hospitals regarding hospital census. The San Diego County current average bed availability is approximately 5,780. For Sunday, May 3rd, hospital census was about 3,372, of which 352 were COVID-19 related hospitalizations, which has been constant over the past month. The total hospital census represents 58% of the total bed capacity, and of the total number of hospitalizations, COVID-19 cases represent just over 10%. And in this next slide, here we show a slight increase in ICU admissions over the past 14 days, going from 108 to 145, as well as a slight increase in hospitalizations going from 314 to 352. Again, we will continue to closely monitor these data. So in summary, again, while we have essentially met the first 4 criteria, for the 5th criteria related to a robust testing program, we feel we have also met the governor's first testing goal, which is a statewide goal of 25,000 tests. San Diego's portion of that is based on our population, which is 8%, which is equivalent to approximately 2,000 tests. And over the past 7 days, San Diego has averaged 2,200 tests per day. And the next slide provides a side-by-side comparison of the state reopening roadmap report card and the federal Opening Up America Again metrics. The first metric for the state includes the prevalence of COVID-19 in the community, and this aligns with the first three federal criteria, which I've already reviewed. Influenza-like illnesses, COVID-like cases, both going trajectory, both with a downward trajectory, as well as positive tests compared to overall tests in the past 14 days with a downward trajectory. The second state metric is the stability of hospitalizations, and this is in alignment with the federal criteria related to the crisis care model, so we've reviewed that. And then the third state metric is testing capacity, which also is related to federal criteria 5, as well as it's also related to the state criteria number 4, which is contact tracing. Both of these metrics will be reviewed in Nick Machione's presentation of our T3 strategy. The remaining 3 state metrics include personal protective equipment inventory, healthcare surge capacity, and public health guidance in place. And these 3 metrics, we have the evidence to support that they are also met. In the county's transition from stage 1, which we are currently in, to stage 2, which we anticipate will occur on Friday, it is important to know what is expected. Moving to stage 2 will be gradual and only include certain industries as indicated by the state. These include retail, for example, curbside pickup only at this time, and manufacturing. Other examples include retail, curbside pickup, and associated manufacturing and supply chains such as bookstores, clothing stores, florists, and sporting goods. What is not included at this time will be offices, which should continue to telework, seated dining at restaurants, and shopping malls. Additional guidance from the state will be provided later this week. Now, please welcome Nick Machione to review our T3 strategy, which is test, trace, and treat.
Thank you, Dr. Wooten. In our fight against COVID-19, we've been accelerating our ability to monitor and protect our communities through testing, contact tracing, and treating those who are testing positive for COVID-19 and those exposed to the virus who need some help. And we call this strategy T3. Test, trace, and treat. And what you'll see on this chart are some of the key metrics we're using to gauge progress on a daily basis. As our efforts expand, the metrics I'll share with you in the future in meetings will also expand. Now, first, our county lab testing task force has been meeting every other day since last Monday with urgency in meeting our primary goal to reduce morbidity and mortality of COVID-19 by conducting more timely, accurate, and accessible diagnostic testing. And that's in pursuit of our goal of 5,200 tests daily. Now, the task force is a county-wide group comprised of the best and the brightest of our lab directors from all of our hospitals, community clinics, medical groups, commercial labs, and our own county public health lab. And it has a tri-chair model led by our own Brett Austin, who's the director of the county public health lab, Dr. Omid Bakhtar, who's the medical director of Sharp Healthcare Lab Services, and Dr. Ronald McLowan, who's the director of his UCSD Health, Laboratory Medicine, and professor and department head of the Division of Lab and Genomic Medicine. Now, I'd like to clarify that when we talk about a COVID test, there are 2 distinct types of tests. You have the polymerase chain reaction test, known as PCR, and this is the diagnostic tool used to determine if someone is currently positive for the COVID-19 virus. Our test efforts have been primarily focused on expanding the PCR tests. The serological testing, on the other hand, looks for the presence of antigens or antibodies and is designed to really tell people if they've had the virus already. We do have a subcommittee of the lab testing task force that is actually studying the future use of serology tests and will be providing dates in the future. Now, our strategy. First, test. As part of our approach to ensure widespread and equitable access to testing, we've been refining how and where testing is offered. In addition to all of the testing sites, the bricks and mortar sites in our hospitals, in our clinics, medical groups, commercial labs, we've also expanded sites through the county. Let me share. We have set up sites for drive-through testing. We've contracted with UC San Diego to administer tests to 20 skilled nursing facilities, which is part of our vulnerable populations. Our regional partners, including our 11 hospitals and 1 clinic, are also expanding testing in their respective communities. The first state-run testing site started today in 3 locations, in El Cajon, Escondido, and Chula Vista, and more are yet to come. We've also just launched the mobile drive-up testing sites, and the first of which was held this past Saturday, using our Live Well mobile in southeastern San Diego, and we'll be expanding that location as well. By going mobile with the bus and other vehicles, we'll quickly move testing sites to locations where our data shows the need. Now, data also shows the need to prioritize congregate care settings. So we are launching testing strike teams who will do just that. We are hiring nurses and other healthcare workers that will be comprised of those testing teams, building on the current teams we have. We're also exploring ways to utilize our first responders to support in testing efforts to reach our vulnerable populations and hard-to-reach communities in our rural communities. Now, this next slide shows a chart. And this chart shows the tests that we're trending, that are conducting and are providing in an equitable way. I'm going to move to the next chart, if I may. And the goal here is to achieve the stage 2 of the state guidelines, which is 3,400 tests. Now, the first 3 bars that are in yellow are averages for the first 3 weeks of April. And we have averaged well better in the last 7 days, with the only day that we haven't been typically reaching our full goal, which is on a Sunday, which have a lower number of tests. Now, while we've not reached the state's goal of 3,400 yet for stage 2, and our regional goal of 5,200 tests in the future, we are making progress and will continue to push forward to significantly increase the number of testing sites by all of our partners, including our county. Now, our expanded testing is going to lead to finding more positive cases, and that's a good thing, because it helps us expand the contact tracing. You see, we have disease investigators who are going to help us find individuals who are positive and get them to isolate and reduce their chance of passing the disease to others. A high-quality onboarding and training program is being developed that will ensure the expanded and competent workforce, and these individuals are going to help us monitor the COVID-19 presence in our community and swiftly signal any need for changes in our public health response. We're also expecting guidance from the state on new technology tools that will support contact tracing, as well as bolstering our own information systems and working with 2-in-1 in our region. Now, based on the estimates for achieving the 5,200 daily tests, we need about 450 full-time employees for tracing. In our Human Resources Department, in concert with our Epidemiology Department, is expediting the recruitment, the hiring, and training of our tracers. As of yesterday, our tracers and staff was up to 135 FTEs, and collectively they investigated nearly 5,000 COVID cases. Today, we've actually increased our tracers to 160 full-time FTEs, and that is growing with each day. In alignment with the state's tracing program, we'll be ensuring our tracers are also culturally reflective of the diverse communities we have here in San Diego. And this includes engaging promotoras, or community health workers, a strategy of our own region that's helped pioneer for the entire state. We'll also be coordinating with the state with their support of additional tracers that will be provided to our county in a future date. Finally, but extremely important, is our plans for treating those with COVID-19 with isolation, care, and support services. While many with suspected cases or mild to moderate symptoms can self-isolate at home or in the hospital for severe cases, some of our fellow San Diegans need some extra help. To date, the county has provided 552 individuals over the course of the pandemic with public health rooms where they can safely isolate, receive support services and wellness checks, and again, prevent the spread of the virus to the general public. And as we move forward with the T3 strategy for treatment, I expect those numbers will grow as we will be engaging other approaches, including telemedicine. That concludes my report, and I will turn it back to Dr. Wooten.
Thank you, Nick. A phased-in approach must be in alignment with the governor's executive directive to modify the stay-at-home order. We heard yesterday from the governor of the plan to transition to stage 2 on Friday, May 8th. This is a phased approach, and we are preparing to ease the public health order restrictions as directed, and to open up businesses, specifically retailers with curbside pickup and associated manufacturing and supply chains. Guidance from the state will be forthcoming this week to make this transition from stage 1, which we are currently in, to stage 2 this Friday. In the meantime, the guidance for the public continues to be the same. We will still practice social distancing, maintaining 6 feet between non-household members, continue good hand washing practices. If you are sick, as an essential worker, stay at home and self-isolate. If your symptoms worsen, call your healthcare provider. And if you are within 6 feet of someone who is not a household member, remember, when you leave your place, cover your face. Now, please welcome Andy Pease to review the CARES Act.
Thank you, Dr. Wooten. Good morning. The CARES Act was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump on March 27th of this year. This $2 trillion economic relief package included $150 billion of funding called the Coronavirus Relief Fund for states, counties, and cities to address costs due to the impact of COVID-19. These dollars were allocated based on population to all states, as well as local governments that had a population over 500,000. The state of California was allocated $15.3 billion, and upon request, a portion of that $15 billion could be directly allocated to the 16 counties and 6 cities in California, which met the criteria of having a population over 500,000. Both the County of San Diego and the City of San Diego met the criteria, and on April 22nd, we received $334 million of funding, and the City of San Diego received approximately $249 million. These CARE Act dollars can be used for any necessary expenditure incurred due to this public health emergency. In the coming slides, I will share with you some examples of how these dollars can be used, and for your consideration, I'll note the following. First, these funds are only for costs incurred between March 1st of this year and December 30th. As a reminder, it will not cover revenue losses or revenue shortfalls. And finally, there is uncertainty on the future state of a fourth stimulus plan for local governments. There continues to be a lot of discussions going on about a future plan, and we are actively advocating for the need for a Phase 4 federal stimulus to include flexibility in the use of these funds for lost revenue, and that it include flexible funds, especially for cities with a population less than 500,000. With that, let's look at how some of the eligible uses of these funds. Now, for simplicity's sake, we have categorized eligible uses into 6 areas, and we've also included some estimated amount for these areas. Response and recovery, $175 million. T3, which Nick just went over, $100 million. Workplace, $50 million. Economic support, $100 million. Cities with populations less than 500,000, $100 million. And audit and oversight, $1 million. If you do the math, you'll see that these estimates, if you total them all up, exceed our CARES Act allocation of $334 million. We will pursue additional funding, including the use of FEMA and other state and federal funds to help cover costs. But if we did everything presented at these levels, we would not have enough CARES Act. Now, in regard to the estimated costs for these areas, let me emphasize that that's all they are. They're just estimates. Some of these areas include costs we've already incurred and will continue to do so to be responsive to COVID-19. But other estimates are for costs we have yet to incur and may never incur, and is dependent on the future course and duration of this pandemic, including when antivirals or a vaccine might be available, and of course, actions taken by this board. The response costs for this virus continue to escalate as our efforts continue to surge. When I presented at the last board hearing, we were on track for spending approximately $60 or so million by year end. And since then, we're now on track for potentially spending closer to $100 million. And as we come up with new strategies, from food distribution efforts to our enhancements in T3 areas, and identify new ways to combat this virus, we will see these costs continue to rise. So the slide, response and recovery. This is by far our largest area, and this reflects all the types of costs we can use as it pertains to our medical and public health efforts. And much of the spending I talked about, getting closer to 100 million, falls in this area. And some examples include establishing temporary public medical facilities, like what we're doing with the UCSD dorms, expenses for establishing and operating public telemedicine capabilities, homeless populations to mitigate COVID-19 effects and enable compliance with public health precautions, maintaining jails as it pertains to sanitation and improvement in social distancing, PPEs, lab equipment, ventilators, staff costs, regular and overtime, in response to COVID-19 efforts, enforcement efforts to ensure compliance with public health orders. As stated earlier, we're projected to spending close to $100 million this year. They primarily fall into this area, as well as the next slide, and we assume these efforts will continue over the coming months. The next slide is T3, test, trace, and treat. Costs that we could cover with CARES Act include, and Nick talked about, diagnostical testing, serological testing, public health nurses to conduct testing, disease investigation, the contact tracing staff that we're augmenting, lab costs and increased shifts for our public health lab, quarantining individuals, including hotels for at-risk individuals. The T3 estimates assume sizable investments and sustained efforts in these areas in the coming days and months. For workplace, areas that we could invest there could include investments in teleworking capabilities for our employees, technological improvements, so we can do our blue jeans and our Zoom and all those sort of things, enhanced PPEs, and hazard pay is considered an allowable expense as well. For economic support, eligible costs for this area include provisions for economic support in connection with the COVID-19 public health emergency, such as grants for small businesses to reimburse the cost of business interruption, programs similar to the federal Paycheck Protection Plan, child care assistance, as we see in item 15 on today's board agenda, unemployment insurance related to COVID-19, as well as item 16 on business stability during the COVID-19 crisis. This also would fit under this category. For the area of cities with a population less than 500,000, for this area, no action so far has been taken or proposed. However, the CARES Act does allow counties to transfer funds to a city within their region. Out of the 18 cities within our county, only the city of San Diego received the direct allocation of CARES Act funds. The state of California received CARES Act funding, and the state can allocate their dollars directly to the smaller counties and cities. Likewise, the county of San Diego could allocate a portion of their CARES Act funds to the cities within the county. If we did so, it would need to be with the following restrictions. The dollars must comply with the CARES Act criteria, and it must be in response to COVID-19. And it could include things such as law enforcement efforts to ensure compliance with the public health orders, economic support initiatives, telework enhancements, sanitation compliance, facility enhancements to ensure social distancing. As a reminder, the dollars cannot be used for lost revenue, and under an audit, it is the County of San Diego that will be required to cover any disallowed costs, not the cities. And a reminder that there's still discussion in the legislature for a forced stimulus plan in which smaller cities could be allocated funding directly. The final slide is an estimate for costs associated with investing in the financial oversight and management of these funds, and to be prepared for future audits in the use of these dollars. In closing, the CARES Act funds are a great resource and will greatly aid us in our COVID-19 response, and we are thankful to Congress and the administration in the passing of this act. These are one-time funds, and it will, of course, require judicial use and consideration in how these funds are utilized in the coming months. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy Sandoval for a look at the economic impact.
Thanks, Andy, and good morning, members of the board. As I shared with your board during the last update, we anticipate significant impacts as a result of the pandemic through both increasing expenses and diminishing revenue. Our estimates still indicate a total revenue shortfall somewhere between $260 and $395 million in the coming fiscal year, with the largest shortfall being sales tax revenue. We are also anxiously awaiting the release of the governor's May revise, expected to be released May 14th, which could identify additional challenges. In terms of expenses, the increase in unemployment will most certainly increase the need for the county's safety net assistance programs, including general relief, the IHSS maintenance of effort, and administration and cost sharing of various eligibility programs. And as Andy just shared with you, the possibility of total costs related to programs eligible under the CARES Act funding could well exceed the amount received, which would add to these forecasted expenditure increases. Our focus remains on refining these estimates as we rebuild the recommended budget to present to your board in July. We will also provide you an update on our financial status for the current fiscal year as part of the third quarter budget adjustment status report on May 19th, along with our recommended capital improvement needs assessment, or CINA. But concerning the longer outlook of a financial recovery, let's take a look at some of the forecasts from the finance sector. It is a common opinion amongst many financial experts that recovery of our economy will take several years. Rating agencies have issued several forecasts on recovery, as you can see here. All of these agencies have put negative watch on all U.S. local governments due to their concerns. With that in mind, it will be imperative and expected that governments such as ours will need to develop long-term strategies to deal with budgetary pressures. We are fortunate to have had strong fiscal strategies that will undoubtedly help us weather through this economic downturn. With our strong liquidity and reserves, we will be in a better position to address budgetary shortfalls. But even considering this, we will need to strategize the use of our reserves not to just fill shortfalls in the next fiscal year, but more likely for several years. These are just some of the things we must keep in mind as we rebuild the budget going into next fiscal year. The stimulus funds we have received from the federal and state government are one-time funds and can help with us with the increased pandemic costs, but should not be allocated to cover ongoing costs. Additionally, as Andy indicated, these funds cannot be used to backfill lost revenue. Our reserves will be used specifically to address these budgetary impacts, which is exactly what they are intended for. We will be recommending a multi-year strategy to fill budgetary gaps with one-time reserves. Reserves will drop below our minimum levels, which are currently reflecting 2 months of operating costs. And how far we drop below will be determined by the willingness and the tolerance to make budget reductions now to align with ongoing resources. One thing we must not lose sight of and will be essential to our long-term financial stability is to ensure that we develop a plan to return our reserves to targeted levels over the next 3 years as required by our administrative code. And this will be during the same time where we will have many financial pressures, including labor negotiations beginning in 2022, ongoing retirement cost increases, and necessary funding for capital infrastructure needs. It won't be easy and will require difficult decisions, but our county is in a great position to rise to the challenge. With that, I'll turn it back over to Don to close.
Thanks, Tracy. In addition to receiving today's update, we recommend your board take the following actions with respect to this item. Ratify all actions previously taken in response to this local health emergency and local emergency, and take any other action necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic emergency response. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Okay, we will now proceed into public comments on this item. I know that initially we had about 91 people that wished to speak, although some of those may have fallen by the wayside. But let me go ahead and ask the clerk of the board to go ahead and invite those people that wish to speak at this time. Again, we remind you to keep your comments within 2 minutes. The clerk will tell you when that time is up. And if there are members of the public that want to speak on this item, again, please dial to the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. And you will be muted until it's your turn to speak. So if the clerk will go ahead and call up the first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will note that we have received 321 e-comments on this item. We have 35 callers on the line prepared to address the board. And as a reminder for those callers, they should mute their TV or their live stream before they begin speaking. We'll be calling the speakers by the last 4 digits of your phone number, and you'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted, and then you may begin your comments. And please state your name for the audio record. I'll turn it over to Aaron to call our first speaker.
Thank you. Our first caller is 0157.
Hi, this is Justin Hart. I live in Rancho Penasquitos here. I first want to commend the mayor and the board for your actions that you took last week. I think that rightful pushback against the governor set the tone for bringing in his county-centric approach yesterday, so I want to commend you for that. I also want to commend the speakers just previously who published for the first time that I've seen, maybe it's been on the site, but it hasn't been on the dashboards, the first data points about DOIO, the date of onset illness. And that is so important because it tells us that the actual peak of the infection likely was over 2 weeks ago. The data that you see in the dashboard, and this is the main point, I want to kind of arm you with more information that you can take to the governor and that you can take to your souls so you feel like you can accelerate the opening of the county, is that the dates we see, for example, the last 5 days, it was noted that there were 10 deaths, 10 people that died in the last 5 days, but that's not correct, is it? Because we don't have the dates of death. I would encourage the county to release that as well, because that will help solve some of this anxiety that people have, because all we see is that dashboard uptick. The best analogy I have for this, just so you can sort of visualize it, is if I go into my son's room and I see a big bag of Starburst candy and all wrappers that are empty inside the bag, I might get concerned. Did he eat that bag over the whole last 24 hours? But he's a dutiful son, and inside each wrapper, he put a mark of the date. One was marked March 29th, one was marked April 15th, one was marked April 22nd, one was marked May 1st. And so you see, I'm not concerned anymore. But all we get as a public on the dashboard is a big dump of those empty Starburst wrappers that we don't know where they belong. So I would encourage you to make those dates known. And please, please compare this to the rest of the country. We are 35 times lower deaths per 100,000 population than any county within 100 miles of New York City. So these are just important data points,
please summarize
and I
your
would
comments.
encourage you to take a look at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0552.
Is that me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Erica Pinto, and I am the chairwoman for the Homoolian Village. First of all, I want to bring to your attention that today is National Day of Awareness for missing and murdered Native women and girls. Native women are 10 times more likely to be murdered and suffer violence. This is yet another epidemic that tribes face on a daily basis. I want to thank each of you for your tireless efforts in keeping San Diego safe. Our tribe declared a state of emergency on March 18th and required businesses on our reservation to close. Many tribes in the state of California did the same thing to protect our communities and stop the spread of coronavirus. Prior to the pandemic, we employed over 800 people at the Hamul Casino and contributed significantly to the local economy. In San Diego County alone, thousands of employees lost their jobs due to the closure of our local casinos. The tribe has made our response to the pandemic a priority, and we are reviewing all guidance from the Center for Disease Control, National Indian Gaming Commission, and the state. We continue to monitor data on the county and state websites to track the cases in the region. Since time immemorial, tribes have watched out for our most vulnerable population and will continue to do so. We have devoted significant time and resources to the development of a comprehensive reopening plan for our casino and tribal government. We've been working collaboratively with health professionals as we sought their expertise on our reopening plan, which we are prepared to share with the state, the county, as well as the public. And we understand that we cannot go back to business as usual when the time is right. We plan to open our casino in phases with limited hours, occupancy limits, with cleaning and sanitizing crews working around the clock, just to name a few. And we are prepared to exercise our commitment and responsibility for the safety of our tribal members, employees, and patrons. Therefore, I am formally requesting that we engage as sovereigns to discuss our reopening. Let's get San Diego back to work, our economy back on track, and let's do it right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0910.
My name is John O'Reilly, founder and owner of O'Reilly Wealth Advisors, and we're in Carlsbad. Thank you, supervisors, for your civil service to the county citizens, and happy birthday, Jim. We learned so much about COVID-19. It was scary initially. Now we know it barely has an impact on people 69 and under and in good health. Supervisors, please acknowledge this learning and do not allow the fear of the unknown from 2 months ago to continue to rule your actions. Our small businesses in North County are on life support. Supervisors, the longer we wait to turn on the economy, the more small businesses we will lose. The longer we wait, the more jobs we will lose and the longer it will take to replace them. The longer we wait, the longer we will be in recession. The longer we wait, the more government will have to contract and our county's cash reserves will be compromised. Supervisors, all businesses should be treated equally before the law as essential. I'm going to coin this a new term, freedom of economy. All churches should be open now. Please give us back our freedom of economy and freedom of religion now. Thank you, supervisors, and have a good day.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1257.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Richer, and I own Checkmat Fallbrook, a small martial arts and fitness facility in Fallbrook, California. I'm a single parent of 2 beautiful children, ages 4 and 6, and the daughter of parents in their late 60s who would be considered high risk for complications from COVID-19. My business is my sole source of income for my family, and we've been closed since March 20th to do our part to slow the spread of this serious virus. I understand and am sensitive to all the sides of the issues surrounding the shelter-in-place restrictions. Since March 20th, I have pivoted my business to a virtual platform to try to keep my members engaged and my business afloat. I'm grateful for those who are able in their own financial circumstances to continue to support. While it has been an effective stopgap, virtual training is not sustainable as a standalone program, as it does not replace or recreate many things that the martial arts training is for those who practice. The reality is retention will decrease the longer the lockdown continues, and the indefinite end date and the public perception that the goalposts on reopening criteria keep moving only accelerates that process. For 6.5 weeks, Californians have socially distanced and followed mitigation procedures while frequenting businesses like Walmart and Home Depot. These essential businesses by nature inherently expose individuals to hundreds of different people of unknown origin and have zero ability to screen for risk factors of infection. Even so, California ranks 33rd in total cases and 32nd in deaths per capita in the United States, which is well below the national rate. This shows that social distancing protocols work. It is certainly not the essential nature of the businesses that have driven these results. Many businesses that are far better equipped to employ mitigation strategies remain shuttered and rapidly approaching the point of no return on financial recovery simply because they've been deemed non-essential. I think it's prudent to consider applying the minimum effective dose of prevention and social distancing because the side effects of the cure are nearly as devastating as the disease. We're just shifting who is most severely affected and how. A little bit of flexibility can go a long way in facilitating sustainability. We can continue to flatten the curve and avoid overwhelming our healthcare system while simultaneously addressing economic concerns. I'm respectfully asking health officials and the Board of
I'm going to ask you to
Supervisors
please summarize your comments.
to locally pivot our strategy to safe, not essential, concentrate support resources to our most vulnerable populations, and join the leadership of counties and municipalities all over California to lobby Sacramento to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1653.
Hi, my name is Jim Tkach. I want to thank you all for your leadership during this pandemic.
It seems that you have taken the appropriate steps to flatten the curve and ensure that our medical system could handle the number of cases in our community. I'll limit my comments to two thoughts. First, we need to remember that nothing in life is 100% risk-free, nor 100% safe. The data presented today indicate to me that it's now safe enough to open and resume our economy. Second, our country is based on guaranteed rights for all citizens. Continuing to suspend economic activity in some sectors prohibits these rights and continues to put the stability of society at far greater risk than the virus itself. I believe it is your sworn duty to ensure that our local governments make no law, public health orders or others, prohibiting these constitutional rights. This has been a tragic circumstance for our nation and the world. I appreciate the difficult balance required in any type of government response, but I encourage you to only support solutions that respect the constitutional rights of all citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2221.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Sean Frederickson, resident in Vista. I'm a father of two wonderful children with a third child on the way in just 4 weeks. I've had my advertising photography company closed for nearly 2 months, and I wonder how I'll provide for my family as our third child arrives. Had I not been personally responsible to save money for an emergency fund, along with a wife that knows how to shop wisely, we wouldn't have survived. I would like to note the information presented from the experts today has been on the number of very low cases, and they stress that those numbers have been shockingly below the models. With that data, they resort back to those models to say the safety measures applied have saved potentially 6,000 to 8,000 lives in the county. I think it's healthy to look at states like South Dakota that chose not to implement those measures, and the state of South Dakota decided to place the constitutional freedom above his hypothetical models, and they have only had 10 deaths across the whole state. San Diego County has not had any new deaths or cases in the past 5 days. Neither is LA County, Riverside County, or Orange County. The state of California as a whole has only had 200 new cases with only 11 deaths. Hospitals are empty, struggling for revenue, while companies are also struggling to survive. When we in the county are led by innovators and entrepreneurs here in San Diego, our home is home to more entrepreneurs per capita than any other county. Are we willing to look at the data which clearly says the response has been far worse than the virus? I ask, are we going to follow the fear led by socialist propaganda, or are we willing to innovate and lead this state of California on what brings freedom and value to our home here in San Diego? For we are a free county, free people, therefore we need to lead this state, for we are Americans.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2438. You may proceed. If not, we'll go on to 2480.
Hi, my name is Patricia Duran, and I am a member of ACE and the Invest in San Diego Family Coalition, and I'm urging the county to invest in providing protection for tenants, focusing on tenant counseling and rental assistance funding. I'm urging for you to support the forgiveness of rent and mortgages during this pandemic. I work for a nonprofit organization that talks to 140 families on a weekly basis, and right now, the crisis is these families can't afford rent, let alone food on their table. I've been providing them resources to food banks, to receiving diapers, to doing different things. The stimulus check is $1,200. Our rent average in San Diego is $1,800 to $2,200 a month. The $1,200 is not doing it for these families, and I'm asking all of you to push this to the state and to urge the state to address this matter of forgiveness of rent and mortgages to help these families budget and go on, because the pandemic right now is really worrying families, and causing stress physically and mentally because they're unable to work, or the ones that are working are subjecting themselves to contracting this virus. So I'm asking for all of the county to please take in consideration the families that have voted all of you in and have followed the stay at home shelter in place. I'm asking, for you guys to please understand that these families have been coming to me with, their utility bills, the groceries, everything has gone up since this has happened. Nothing has been easy. I thank you for your support.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2634.
Good morning. My name is Corrine Lamb. I was invited by Supervisor Desmond, and I'm honored to speak on behalf of my industry. I'm a salon owner and hairstylist in Rancho Bernardo. The testing to receive my license wasn't to make sure I knew how to cut a straight line, which is surprisingly true, but to make sure I uphold the health, safety, and sanitation guidelines that were set in school. Over the past 15 years of being a licensed cosmetologist, I've had several surprise inspections in my salon and others I've worked in. These inspections are organized by my state. The infractions my business may receive are paid to my state. As quoted in the 1600-hour cosmetology curriculum review, it states, cosmetology schools provide essential skills for safety, sanitation, and infection control for all. To that point, my salon has always evolved with the needs of our clients and the laws that our business is mandated. As hairstylists, we cut our clients' hair off before they go through cancer treatments. We're there when they get married, pregnant, divorced, their last hairstyle by the hospital bed. That is my career. There are so many like me that are doing our duties as licensed cosmetologists to maintain a safe space for our clients in a post-COVID-19 world, not just because we are trained and mandated to do so, but because we care about our clients. My industry is already regulated by the state to uphold sanitation and infection control. My business is literally under construction to make space for clients to maintain distance. I've invested in extensive protective care because that's what my training has taught me, to evolve with the times and to adapt to new practices, not just in fashion and trends, but health and safety as well. When it comes to phase 2 businesses, their reopenings, making a clear pathway for phase 3 and continuing to flatten the curve, an industry like my own that has a backbone in health, safety, and sanitation is ideal for success. We are business owners, therapists, artists. We take our job seriously and as seriously fun. Please reconsider the positive implications that will come from our patrons' ability to return to a visible sense of normal. Of all the industries that you have to consider in how you begin advancing our economy, the beauty industry is one you should have some sense of ease in knowing they will handle the circumstances with the utmost care and concern for health, safety,
I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments, please.
Thank you for your time today, and happy birthday, Supervisor.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2847.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Rebecca Jones, the mayor of San Marcos. Thank you, Chair Cox and Supervisors Jacob, Desmond, Gaspar, and Fletcher for your leadership. I'm grateful for all of the hard work and dedication of our Health and Human Services leaders and staff. And happy birthday, Supervisor Desmond. Small cities also need the CARE Act dollars. Cities that have less than 500,000 people need the dollars to implement the health orders and the safe COVID strategies. We need the county to help us secure these dollars. We also need community testing sites in North County. I know there's one in Escondido, but we need more for the general public. I understand that the difficult decisions that have caused devastating death and despair. However, as mayor, I daily speak to anxious business owners of these small businesses that face a tremendous amount of fear and despair. I'm heartbroken to see all of the small business owners lose all of their blood, sweat, and tears that they've invested for so many years. Each day is significant in the life of these businesses. I implore you to continue to push for regional control so we're able to prove that San Diego is innovative and we are leaders in this difficult time. We need to start as soon as possible. In San Marcos, over 90% of our businesses are small businesses, and each day they are calling with their concerns and their fears. All businesses are essential, and many of these businesses that we have today can open under the same practices. San Marcos is here to assist our businesses to get back to work. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2438.
Hi, good morning, Board Chair Jacob and Supervisors Gaspar, Fletcher, and Desmond. My name is Esmeralda Flores. I'm the Immigrant Rights and Binational Affairs Advocate for the ACLU San Diego and Imperial Counties, a proud member of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. We are here today to urge the Board of Supervisors to ensure that San Diego's county response to the COVID-19 pandemic is grounded in science, data-driven, and aligned with our region's shared values of fairness, compassion, and public safety. We continue to call on the county to collect and share with the public additional demographic data associated with COVID-19 testing, confirmed cases, hospitalizations, and we've seen clear evidence of the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on people and communities of color, especially the African American community. It is essential that the county disaggregate the data it collects by race, ethnicity, whether a person is an essential worker, and other important categories. CDC safety guidelines are impossible to comply with in jail. We urge you to call on Chief Probation Officer Gonzalez, Sheriff Gore, and District Attorney Stefan to protect lives by releasing as many children and adults as quickly and safely as possible. Also critical to increase the rate of testing in our jails. There are more than 4,000 people in San Diego County jails. As of April 28, only 112 had been tested. That's less than 3%. And you need to ensure that folks who remain in custody of the county government have access to PPE, personal hygiene, and other sanitary supplies, and the ability to make free phone calls to contact their loved ones. Finally, as people are being released from jail and immigration detention, we urge you and the Public Health Department to put a process in place to ensure they have access to the hotel and motel rooms secured by the county. We, the people, are counting on you, our elected representatives, to act responsibly in this unprecedented public health crisis. On behalf of the ACLU, thank you for your public service and for your responsible, fair, and humane leadership.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3343.
Hello, this is Teresa Kanopka. I want to first say thank you for your leadership. I know this is a very hard time. Thank you for helping the people. What I would like to discuss is how the people who are most affected by this in terms of fatalities is a known population. They are elderly in senior centers. They have comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. And I would strongly suggest, could we perhaps give guidance for the at-risk population to protect them most instead of having everyone shelter in place and quarantine? Because at the end of the day, regardless of tracing and testing, we cannot keep tabs on all the residents in San Diego. We don't know who has this, who's giving it to who, but we do know who is at risk, and we can give those people guidance to protect themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3434.
Hello, my name is Ryan Rebold, the COO of Pine Valley Bible Conference Center and Camp. Thank you, supervisors, for this opportunity to share. We know the decisions you've had to make over the past few months have been difficult, but also have saved lives. I'm grateful for the opening of beaches, parks, and golf courses, but have to say there seems to be a pattern forming for the elitists here in San Diego County. Beaches are open, but parking lots closed, allowing those that live closest to the beach to benefit from them. You open up parks, but most playgrounds are closed, not allowing for young families to really enjoy them. Golf courses are not like the other two, as they are not public properties, and yet you have to own your own set of golf clubs to play. The average income for a single golfer for recreational purposes in our country is $100,000 annually, and I believe it's even higher here locally, meaning if you have the means and your own golf clubs, you get to play. Much like not opening all the public places to launch your boat, only those with the means to have a private launch or a boat club can. The double standard for all the people in our community to take advantage of these recreational activities is awful. We here at Pine Valley Bible Conference Center and Camp have over 60 acres and can be serving families safely and more accommodating than any of the golf courses here in town. We're not asking for special treatment. We can abide by every single health restriction and then some. We've been told by the Environmental Health Department that we cannot open because of the order of the Health Department as a non-essential according to Section 19. Both their office and an email from Diane Jacobs' office cannot answer why a golf course, which is a non-essential business, can be open, but we cannot, still under Section 19. Please, supervisors and Dr. Wooten, allow us and the other camps in town to open up now and safely. Stage 2 includes more public spaces, so allow the public to enjoy the outdoors, allowing us to receive a local certification. We do not have to host overnight stays or serve meals inside our dining halls. We have the staffing to monitor all areas of activity to make sure physical distancing is in place, adequate hand washing areas. The entire county should be able to benefit from recreational activities, not just the elite. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3647.
Oh, hello. My name is Brittany Mayer. I am a mother and educator in San Marcos, California. I want to commend and thank the board for your work to lead our community through this very rough time. And happy birthday to Jim Desmond. My family would like to voice our strong opposition and concern for the face covering mandate that's been issued for all people over the age of 2 in San Diego, California. We agree with the main concern of keeping San Diegans healthy and that restrictive policies should be sensible and responsible. Because we are now under this heavy new county-wide mandate for all people over the age of 2 to wear cloth masks, including violations that are punishable by $1,000 fines or 6 months in jail, it's important that the science and data supports this policy. I sent emails to all of you quoting these sources, but simply put, the current medical studies we have on the safety and efficacy of cloth face coverings, and specifically cloth face coverings against SARS-CoV-2, provide strong evidence that cloth masks do not stop the dissemination of this virus. And ironically, they pose documented health risk and safety concerns for the wearer. Per those scientific studies, the rates of respiratory infection outcomes are higher in cluster studies of those wearing cloth masks. Both surgical and cotton masks are ineffective in preventing the dissemination of SARS-CoV-2 from the coughs of patients with COVID-19 to the environment and to the external mask surface. And that's concerning even in the last 2 hours as I've been watching your meeting. Every one of you has touched the outside of your mask to readjust and bring it down and put it up, and that risks contamination across the population as a whole. There's speculation by the authors of these studies that cloth masks' moisture retention, their reuse, and the poor filtration increases the risk of infection for the wearers. The studies point continually and consistently to the harm caused by cloth masks. The CDC has repeatedly cautioned throughout the years healthy people against wearing face masks. Our U.S. Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, as of March 2nd, was claiming that wearing face masks could actually increase a person's risk of contracting COVID-19.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments, please.
The concern is that this mandate is inappropriate given the science and the data, and it should be reconsidered. And we ask that this be rescinded instead of being a county mandate and policy to be a suggestion at best. But please review the science and the data and the email that I sent you, and I will go ahead and resend the email to all of you to follow up on the sources and the studies.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3650.
Good morning. My name is Michael Knudsen. I'm calling you today to urge this board to fully reopen San Diego's economy, following the footsteps of MoDOT's Sutter and Newport counties, and let all people labeled non-essential go back to work. Unemployment correlates with alcohol and opioid abuse, depression, divorce, suicide, and homelessness. When you sentence someone to be unemployed, as California is doing right now to every employee arbitrarily labeled non-essential, you are sentencing them to die, just on a longer timeline. For every 1% the unemployment rate goes up, the suicide rate also goes up by 1%. The spectacle of police officers showing up to threaten business owners with fines and arrest for trying to put food on their tables is so hideous, so evil, that I still cannot process my government is doing it. It's something out of East Germany or a bad horror film. It does not compute. But here we are. It would be wrong even if this were the Ebola virus with a 90% mortality rate. In the case of COVID-19, where the World Health Organization estimated a 3.4% mortality rate as of March 3rd, and where it's clear those at risk are the elderly and people with pre-existing health conditions, it is wrong and it is ridiculous. The two Bakersfield doctors YouTube just censored, Dan Erickson and Artin Masihi, medical professionals both, mind you, concluded the mortality rate in California is actually 0.03%. For this, we've destroyed our economy. I do not think anyone in government comprehends the economic damage they have caused. Nationwide, we have 30 million people unemployed. 1/3 or more of California's restaurants may never reopen. Most non-essential California small business shut down, have days left to survive, not weeks, and certainly not months. All the business owners I've heard from have said they receive no state or federal assistance, but the rent is still due. They're going on their 8th week with no incomes at all. Quote, what do they expect will happen to small businesses like mine with landlords that are refusing to waive rent? My rent costs alone equal engineers' yearly salary. How exactly do they expect us to survive? 80% of the U.S. economy is based on service industries. 44% of it consists of small business. California and every other state on lockdown is taking a wrecking ball to all of its small businesses. California is destroying at least a third of its economy, and this will domino effect. Things are going to get bad. It gets worse than the disease. I urge you to reopen. MODOC, Southern Yuba just did. Governor didn't stop them, so nothing should stop you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3758.
Hello, my name is Patricia Keller, and I'm a business owner operating in festival and fair management, which is currently considered a phase or stage 4 business. To date, we've received no SBA, no PPP or economic injury loan assistance. Our clients are local chambers and downtown business associations who are in the business of promoting business in their cities. These festival events are key components in their annual budgets. They contribute tens of thousands and up to $100,000 per event to these clients. So without these funds, their mission of supporting business in their communities is severely hampered, and some have to shutter their doors temporarily. Our events also support livelihoods of hundreds of artisans, vendors, and entrepreneurs who rely on weekend festivals, many of whom rely on weekend festivals for their sole income. Another critical component that festivals provide is the economic value to the downtown business areas where they're actually conducted. In addition, there's sales tax revenue generated and unquantified revenue that's provided by all the related logistical support contracts that we put in place. As festival managers, we're fully capable of reordering festival layouts, guiding pedestrian flows, providing PPE for our staff, increasing sanitation protocols to demonstrate our sincere concern for the health and welfare of our staff, our vendors, and the public. In addition, we operate outside in the fresh air and sunshine of our beautiful county, which is a much healthier environment than what could be found inside a big box store. So we are certainly capable and willing to make accommodations for employee safety, customer safety, sanitation, physical distancing, and effective public safety announcement type of communication at our events. I'm concerned when I hear regular references to when the governor will authorize movement into the next phases. I'm asking the County of San Diego to press in on the request for total local control, and please find the balance to fully reopen our economy sooner rather than later. Every day is critical. I thank you for the opportunity to air these very real concerns. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4877.
Hi, my name is Ariane Bataki. I'm a Solana Beach resident, and I work at Carmel Mountain Preschool in San Diego, California. We've been operating and family owned and operated since 1983, so 37 years now. And I have a couple concerns. One is the requirement through community care licensing that all teachers now wear masks in the classrooms. We're operating with children that are 18 months to age 6, and it's really not appropriate for masked adults to be interacting with children that young. These children don't always communicate through language like adults. They communicate a lot more through facial expressions, and they need to see the adults' faces in order to understand what is going on a lot of the time. They also need to see the adults' faces to feel safe and secure and to make a connection with these adults. The other thing is, as you guys have noticed, there's new places that are starting to take new children throughout San Diego. Can you imagine dropping off your child at a place they've never been before in their entire life with a masked adult? It's not safe for our children, and I can't imagine both the social and emotional damage it's going to effect on these children. And then the second thing is, I know someone else also mentioned this before, but preschools are they're essential for us to get back to our economy. Most of the private preschools are going to be going out of business if something isn't changed. the new rules and regulations from Newsom saying that we have to operate with a group size of 10 and you have to have the same people in with those children means that you're reducing your occupancy by a lot of us by 25 to 40%. And the amount of adults that is increasing is almost doubling. So instead of having on average 1 to 2 children per classroom, you're having 2 to 4 children per classroom. So you're actually increasing the amount of people, and it's just not financially viable. So these preschools are not going to be able to serve our community to get the economy back into action unless 2 things happen. Either you
Ma'am, I'm
help.
going to ask you to summarize your comments, please.
Okay, I'm just asking for you guys to retract that the child care workers that operate with children under the age of 6 have to wear masks, and that you guys find a way to either modify the 10 children group size for child cares and the amount of staff, or have some kind of subsidy to help people stay in business in that industry.
Thank you. Our next speaker is also 4877.
Hi, my name is Donna Trinhill Taccone. Hello, Supervisor Cox. I'm a Bonita Vista High School graduate, 1978, and you were my ASB supervisor. And I'm also calling to talk about early childhood education, twofold. One is the 1 to 10 classroom ratios that have recently gone into effect. The previous caller is correct. We will go out of business if we are required to have 10 children in a classroom with only 1 staff person and then an additional 1 or 2 people only in that classroom to provide breaks for the teacher in that classroom. It's not a way for us to continue to operate as early childhood educators. We need that particular modification in the 1 to 10 classroom order. Also about face coverings, children that come to preschool, young children, they need to see smiling faces, smiling eyes, confident, warm voices, heartfelt smiles to be able to be healthy and thrive and survive when their parents are away, especially during this time when their parents are away at the hospital for hours and hours on end and they're here with us for 10 hours a day. We cannot run a successful early childhood operation wearing face coverings with toddlers and 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. So we are requesting that order be looked at and modified as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5301.
Hi, thank you. My name is Trish Thomas, and I live in District 4. I'm the president of the San Diego County Dental Hygienists Society, and I'm calling to address our county public health order. Under our current state order, the dental is essential for emergency care, and under our county order, the word healthcare providers as addressed in line 7 needs to be clearly stated or defined as who these healthcare providers apply to. Dental practices resuming non-essential procedures under the justification of line 7 for our county orders as healthcare providers are prematurely reopening without clear guidance from CDC and OSHA and what constitutes as adequate PPEs and infection control protocols. These protocols are necessary to protect not only the employees but patients from bloodborne pathogens as well as viral infections, and it must be in place before resuming non-essential dental procedures. If not, there is a very real risk on San Diego's containment of the novel coronavirus and spike in our county numbers that will likely happen. Please remember, we work directly in our patients, your mouth, and the procedures we perform produces large droplets and aerosols. The governor has not identified dental in stage 2 to resume non-essential procedures. Current OSHA and CDC guidelines still list dental for essential emergency care. I've had multiple dental hygienists that have reached out to me throughout everyone's district because of this gray area, i.e. healthcare providers listed in line 7, stating that we can return to work, but our state order still says dental is essential emergency service. San Diego hygienists needs our county officials' help to clarify and clearly identify who healthcare providers in our county order applies to in regards to resuming elective preventive procedures. Thank you for your tireless work and your team that have put into safely navigating San Diego through this pandemic.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5715.
Good morning, County Supervisors. My name is Warsan Upton, and I am with YouthWell, which is part of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. First, thank you so much for your leadership and support during this pandemic. In a time like this, it's critical that all members of our community are connected and have access to information and resources. Having access starts with access to the internet. During this pandemic and time of physical distancing, access to the internet is even more important than ever before. This is why we're asking the county to ensure that families, especially those in census-identified, hard-to-count communities, have access to the internet. Thank you so much for your time and for your leadership. Have a great day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6240.
Good morning. My name is Pam Schofield, and I was asked to speak by Supervisor Desmond. In 1992, I moved here as an engineer for General Electric. A couple years later, I resigned to go to law school at the University of San Diego. For the last 20 years, I have been an attorney serving the construction industry. As you know, businesses are wiped out. We have a 25% average unemployment in the 7th largest economy in the world. It should bother you that instead of trying to ease the rampant fear and anxiety, Newsom thought it was wise to send his own enforcement to the beaches of Orange County, which does nothing but to escalate tensions. While we've sadly suffered 144 deaths, we have 3.3 million other people in this county. And by keeping businesses closed, we've abandoned tens of thousands, likely hundreds of thousands of lives who have been destroyed, and not just financially. Last week, our Superior Court had an update, and they're in dire straits. There are 48,000 matters to be rescheduled. 7,400 filings have not been processed. And they have grave, grave concerns about where the funding is going to come from this year because of the significantly less revenues from taxes. This will only get worse if we don't reopen all businesses right now. The sooner we open up all businesses, the less likely we will need to rely on federal funding. There's something else that you guys might not be aware of. These ever-changing, never-ending, overreaching rules are exactly why there are several Facebook pages demanding opening up. One in California started April 11th, and as of last night, it has 145,000 members. That's an average growth of 42,000 people a week, which is stunning. People are forming groups and taking to the streets because they are fed up with being forced to lose everything they've worked for, despite the real data now showing that the recovery rate is much higher than was modeled. So in closing, the bottom line is that we've well exceeded the original goals. These stage 2 businesses should be allowed to open up under the same safety protocols that the construction industry has been successful with while working in full capacity. It's a slap in the face that they can only offer.
Ask you to summarize your comments, please.
Yes. So again, it's not rocket science, and we need to stop hiding behind the fear, the governor's orders, and the timing for phases. San Diegans are truly suffering, and your job is to lead the way to get us all open up now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6365.
Good morning. My name is Mark Stutzman. I live in District 3, and I want to thank the board for exercising the authority it has under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution as delegated by the state to minimize the death and disease in our state, and I urge you to continue exercising that authority as data and science advises you. I start with a quote from Dan Baum's interview of John Ehrlichman, who's Nixon's top domestic advisor. Published in published in the April 2016 edition of Harper's Magazine, and I quote, "At the time, I was writing a book about the politics of drug prohibition. I started to ask Ehrlichman a series of earnest, wonky questions that he impatiently waved away. You want to know what this is really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about drugs? Of course we did. End quote. Generations of racist policies and government neglect have left communities of color under-resourced, underinsured, and with much bigger rates of pre-existing conditions. Racial disparities in healthcare, policing, incarceration, and who holds essential jobs are among the factors that make people of color among the most vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic. We need detailed racial and other demographic data on COVID-19 testing, infections, hospitalizations, and deaths to direct resources to where they're most needed. San Diego cannot afford to wait. If we are to address the racial injustices in our communities, exacerbated by the legacy of Nixon's war on drugs, we have to address this pandemic through a racial justice lens. This means our county government agencies must release equity, provide data about testing, and provide cases, hospitalizations, and deaths disaggregating by key demographic metrics, including race, ethnicity, gender identity, and whether a person is an essential worker. In summary, by centering our responses to meet the needs of our most vulnerable communities, we can ensure an equitable and efficient process that is inclusive of all and addresses past inequities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6406.
Hi, my name is Dante Garcia Pamantuan, and I am a director on the board of the Imperial Beach Chamber of Commerce, which is in District 1. I am also a full-time realtor and business owner and resident of Imperial Beach. We have been the most proactive organization here in Imperial Beach to provide resources and communication to our small local businesses here in Imperial Beach. I just wanted to give kudos to the entire board for unanimously voting 5-0 for item 14 for requesting local control from the state and from the governor. I also want to wish Jim Desmond a happy birthday, and I wanted to thank him and Kristen Gaspar for their leadership and their sense of urgency in reopening businesses here in Imperial Beach and throughout the county of San Diego. Wanted to also mention that thank you, Mr. Cox, for opening or keeping our local Imperial Beach open. Now we need to serve our visitors. And the city of Imperial Beach, the outdoor seating venues for the small businesses are ready to go with the guidelines and safety protocols from the various authorities mentioned earlier. So we invite you and all the board members and the county supervisors to come to Imperial Beach. It's a sunny, friendly place. We are the southwesterlymost U.S. city in the continental United States, and we'd love to serve you a beer or a taco or something that's, indicative of our vibrant community and our vibrant business community here in Imperial Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6781.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Wright, and I am a biologist, and I'm the co-director of Wild Wonders. We are a wildlife education refuge in unincorporated Bonsall. And I want to thank you for allowing us to comment today because I'd like you to strongly consider allowing the reopening of businesses such as ours who work in a completely open air environment in part of phase 2. We have received no government funding, and every waking minute we have strived to apply for every possible funding opportunity that has come up, and we have gotten nothing. And we've been closed for 2 months. We do primarily education outreach, and that is schools and libraries, which are closed throughout the year. So, but you know what? We're strong and we have a plan. So we believe that we exceed the and go above and beyond to comply with the COVID guidance. Outdoors, 5 acres. We have an opportunity for exercise and recreation. It's complete walking, and we're private. That's how we're a little different from the nurseries and the golf courses and the parks and the trails that are open. We feel we're very, very unique because it's appointment only, 1 family household member at a time with 1 educator, providing social distancing, masks required, and constant sanitizing. And we have signage throughout, paperless payments. We have signage requiring seniors or high risk not admitted. So we're able to utilize whatever possible opportunities we have to open safely while we're struggling to survive. We have 100+ animal ambassadors that we provide for every single day, and we have a small staff, and we just want to be considered to allow for private guided tours while complying and exceeding these safe requirements for California. If we have no more outreach, this is our only avenue, and we don't know if we can hold on for very much longer. But thank you very much for your consideration and allowing us. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond and the board, for allowing us to voice our comments, and hopefully you will consider our unique situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6910.
Good morning. My name is Shireen Rezada, and I reside in Rancho Santa Fe. I'm here today to support the recommendations of Invest in San Diego Families. The county must continue to do the vital work of reducing the population of confined youth and adults, starting with releasing those most vulnerable to COVID-19. No one should be forced to live in conditions that imperil their lives during this pandemic. The U.S. is the world's largest incarcerator. We have 21% of the world's incarcerated population, so we face a unique challenge in combating this. The risk that COVID-19 poses in our jails and prisons is indisputable and well documented. Everyone should have the ability to follow health experts' guidance to protect themselves. But incarcerated people are unable to practice the simplest of measures. Social distancing is virtually impossible, their health care is substandard, and they have inadequate access to PPE, sanitary supplies, and conditions. The deadly virus continues there as a growing threat. And what gets lost in the conversation is the impact of all this on the larger community. Corrections staff go back and forth to work from their homes. People are brought to jail after arrest and then often released if they make bail or have a short stay. With this constant flux, more sick people in jail will result in more spread in our community. There's been some progress, but we have the power to further change this grim outcome. We must continue to decrease the incarcerated population to the most serious offenses. Law enforcement can curb arrests and release parole violators and look for alternatives to criminal enforcement when feasible. Hundreds of thousands are sitting in our nation's jails because of technical violations, inability to pay fines or cash bail, and are now at higher risk for COVID-19. The need for criminal justice reform and decreasing our prison population has always existed, but now it's more urgent than ever. It will unequivocally save lives both within and outside our prison walls. Our entire society has made changes in previously unimaginable ways to protect our families and communities. There's no humane reason to exclude those incarcerated. This is fundamentally a public health issue that ultimately impacts us all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6962.
Yes, hello. My name is Sandy Scannell, and I'm a resident of Coronado. I believe that you, as our Board of Supervisors, need to lead. First, it is important to listen to your health professionals, but you are elected to balance their opinions with the needs of the economy. You must not cower and focus only on staying completely safe to the detriment of our economy. Wilma Wooten's guidelines are overwrought and need to be reduced. Please review her directives and use common sense to reduce her draconian edicts. I think that you need to rein in her grip on all of us. We do need to protect the elderly and immunocompromised, but the risks for the great majority of the public are very low. You have been elected to make decisions to balance risks and rewards. Please do not allow the health officials to continue to scare you into cowering. Secondly, your constituents need you to lead by telling Gavin Newsom that San Diego is ready to reopen all our businesses as they were meant to be run. At the very least, we need to open all businesses and restaurants using the same rules that the essential stores have been following. Social distancing and common sense can be implemented by small businesses just as the essential stores have done. Only allowing curbside service is not enough for businesses to survive. Please demand the right to make those local control decisions immediately. If you wait patiently for Gavin Newsom's permission, it will be another month. In summary, number one, balance Wilma Wooten's draconian guidelines with common sense and the needs of our economy. And number 2, demand that Newsom let you make the decisions locally. San Diego needs to open all businesses and let them use the same rules as the so-called essential businesses have been using. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7064.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Ryan. I'm a Coronado resident, and I own a boutique law firm that specializes in real estate and financial services litigation. Firstly, let me thank you profusely for your 5-0 vote earlier for autonomy on when you determine reopening. But the flaw in the vote is it requested autonomy. It didn't demand autonomy. The notion that a public official or group of officials can determine whether or not a person's otherwise legal business is essential is offensive, and it contradicts every notion of individual liberty upon which this nation was founded. We don't make public policy based on anecdotes, but anecdotes can identify absurdities in public policy, so I'd like to start with an anecdote. The state orders its beaches and Orange County beaches closed. The state orders mom and pop retailers closed. Big box retailers are open, and plastic surgery centers in Beverly Hills are now open for elective surgery. That anecdote perfectly identifies why the shutdown is no longer about public health, and it's simply about politics. The IHME model at University of Washington is grotesquely flawed. That's the model upon which these shutdowns are based. I would ask that the Board of Supervisors engage in civil obedience. Civil obedience is lauded when one specific group's rights are trampled. Civil disobedience should be lauded when all of our civil liberties are trampled, and I implore the Board of Supervisors to vote for San Diego County to reopen its businesses now. My perspective on why business needs to reopen is informed by my very, very diverse client list. I have developers who have completed homes that they can't sell. I have a disabled girl who has a trust for her benefit that can't collect its rent because the trust is invested in real estate assets and those tenants are no longer paying their rent. I have mortgage servicers who are forced to pay their staff and their rent, and they're not allowed to get their mortgage payments anymore because the federal government has determined that certain borrowers shouldn't have to pay. Thank you very much for your actions so far. It's appreciated and they're courageous, and I ask that you go one step further and order businesses to reopen. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7769.
Hi, yes. My name is Molly Sylvester, and I'm a resident and business owner here in the county. I'm highly concerned that there's basically no talk from our government officials about the horrific damage that is occurring and will continue to occur in our country if we don't go back to work. I keep hearing this is reopening the economy versus lives. No, this is lives versus lives. I'm talking about alcoholism, drug addiction, overdoses, domestic violence, depression, and suicide. Please, can you start talking about these out loud in public so people can start actually realizing there's just as much, if not more damage being done to our world than the deaths that are going to occur from COVID-19. I am not heartless. I am compassionate about those that are losing their lives and all who are affected by this. But I need you to speak publicly about the far-reaching effects of those affected by a suicide of a family member, the abuse of a spouse or a child contributed to alcoholism or drug addiction, or the overdoses of those unable to navigate through this any other way is astronomical. The depression and destructive behavior from those suffering the loss of hope, families, homes, and jobs that will inevitably impact millions of people for decades to come. I implore you to use your voice and your platform to engage our community in a dialogue that is necessary to navigate us through this in the healthiest, safest way possible. I am putting my trust in your ability to do this, and I pray that you will not stay quiet because of politics. I ask that you please take a moment to feel the blessings of your own economic security and stable support system you have in place, and compare that to those that do not have these types of resources or conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7966.
Hello, my name is Elijah Sumner. I'm a college student resident down here in District 4. I want to thank you all for listening to us and implore you to listen to your fellow citizens that are bringing these issues up today. And thank you to my fellow citizens for calling in and standing up for your rights, and I pray that you all continue to do so. The idea of preventing all deaths was never the goal, but it has shifted greatly. The model was greatly overblown at the start, and the Institute College for London has historically had poor modeling. Neil Ferguson has caused extremely overblown models in the past with bird flu in 2005, swine flu in 2009, foot and mouth disease in 2001, and cow disease, and on it goes. These are orders of magnitude less, him estimating in the thousands to millions for almost each one of these, and the deaths usually being in the hundreds, not necessary for the billions of dollars in damages that his estimates have caused. So I implore our health medical officials to not rely on those for their decisions. It is terrible modeling. Again, death is unfortunate in any way it occurs. However, it is a natural part of life that we all accept to one degree or another, whether it be traveling, working, or anything else. In the same time frame from last year, from January to March, there were over 400 deaths due to accidents alone, and over 800 overall. And this doubles by going up to over 1,600 in June. This is from the San Diego Medical Examiner's Office. In the same time frame, we've shut down over 1 million people and their businesses and their livelihoods and their mental health over the deaths of over 100. It's terrible that we've lost those lives, but it is not even close to being high enough to dictate these mandates, these continued stay-at-home orders. The method of flattening the curve does not reduce the net number of deaths, but just extend the pandemic itself over time to allow medical care to stay underwhelmed. As those under 50 are extremely low-risk cases and already greatly reduced estimates, we should be lifting the stay-at-home orders now and encouraging social distancing and masking restrictions to be removed. We know that these cases will go up, but they are the population and demographics that can take the virus. This will help boost our herd immunity and in the long run protect the most vulnerable, as about 67% of the population in San Diego County are not in the vulnerable category. These numbers are revenue and economic stability.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to please summarize your comments.
We ask that you do not ratify these measures. We slowed the spread. It is time to pressure the governor to open up all restrictions for people under 50, with the recommendation only for those over that age. His plan is unnecessary long and phased out. Our hospitals can take it, our people want it, and our economy needs it. We the people don't want a new normal. We can wash our own hands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8170. 8170, you may proceed. If not, then we'll move on to 9191.
Hello?
Hi there. Could you please state your name for the record? You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
My name is John Graham. And I'm calling, and I want to first thank the supervisors and the mayors and the city council people for keeping San Diego County in its various areas safe as possible. And my call is about community pools, community gyms, those that are not in somebody's house, but are in a community where people live and will be used by various people coming in from the different households within that community. And I'm not urging that they not be able to be used at all. I'm urging that we do follow the social distancing and the one family, one person rules until they can be done so safely. There's many issues, with the gym. There's many machines, and a person goes from one to the other. And another thing, it needs to be cleaned by professionals or somebody that works at that facility, not by the people that use it, because as you've seen, there's some people who believe in this situation. There's some that don't. And some of those who don't, if they're left to clean up after themselves, may just think that they don't need to clean up. So just think of all the equipment in a gym and all the different surfaces in a pool from the time that you touch the gate to come into the community pool to possibly going down a ladder to get into the pool and coming back up. There's just the tiles on the side of the pool. So I'm asking for your support in opening those up as soon as possible, but opening them up safely, and make sure that the cleanliness is done by people that are responsible for cleaning it correctly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9349.
Hi, my name is Julie Lowen, and I am calling because on Friday, May 1st, a motorcycle officer decided to give stressed out parents tickets for arriving at childcare to pick up their children without wearing a 100% ineffective cloth face mask. Why is there an order in place requiring these? Did we really need to use our police officers in this manner? On Friday, a 28-year-old single mother living in my home had a mild heart attack resulting from the stress she's endured as she watches her hard work to become successful and rise from the impoverished life into a self-sustaining career and stability for her daughter evaporate. She works as a self-employed stylist in a salon which holds one guest at a time. Without a doubt, these small businesses could have remained open and would have seamlessly continued providing services with only slight adjustments. In Vista, we've lost Sunrise Cafe forever. As the amazing owner, Bobby, decided the struggle to keep his small business open was impossible because of the ongoing extensions and encumberment of some of these health orders. Watching while people who haven't missed a paycheck extend the shutdown unreasonably as they take day trips to yell over loudspeakers at beachgoers, or worse, abusing the role of police officers to interfere in the lives of law-abiding citizens has been surreal. Some of the people we've entrusted to serve have used this pandemic to test their authoritarian powers. San Diegans are not impressed. Everyone within the structures of government should quickly remember who owns this country. Stop these overreaches and end these segments of useless interference in our lives. Start with rescinding the order to wear ineffective cloth face masks. These are not healthy, and scientists agree these do not prevent the spread of COVID-19. In fact, the virus lives in the air for 3 hours, as reported. Then everyone removing their mask today for any period of time in any space just infected the entire space for 3 hours. San Diegans are reasonable and willing to take effective action, but we do not consent to any notion which would reduce our lives to adventureless existences without social contact, nor do we agree to employ uncomfortable and highly ineffective procedures just to be considered socially compliant. Finally, I want to know, how many of the deaths marked as COVID-19 were people who actually died of other serious illnesses?
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments, please.
Okay, my final question, is there a confirmed positive COVID-19 test for every person who died and had a COVID-19 listed as the cause of death? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6466. 6466.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. This is Sean Elo Rivera, Executive Director of Youth Will, and we are a member of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. First, I want to thank you for hearing the voices of our young people that have spoken up over the last several meetings. With a special thank you to Supervisor Cox and Supervisor Fletcher. Our young people are very, very scared about what is going on right now, and the fact that you all have responded to some of their needs means a lot to me and to us. I just want to flag one more thing for you all. Communication obviously is so key in this time. Each supervisor district in San Diego has census designated hard to count communities. These are communities that for various reasons, whether it be low income level, language accessibility reasons, et cetera, are just simply hard to get in touch with and hard to communicate with. And what I'm asking for is for an investment in internet access for those communities for a couple reasons. One, to make sure that the young people who live in those communities have an ability to learn. And second, to make sure that those communities are all counted. The census is going to be even more dependent upon internet access than we'd initially thought. And the investment in making sure that our hard to count communities have internet access will make us more sure that San Diego is counted properly and that we receive the funding that we need in the future. So once again, the ask is for making sure that we have internet access, particularly in our census designated hard to count communities in each of the 5 supervisor districts. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9358.
Hello, my name is Angelina Corsani, and I'm here today on behalf of the Center on Policy Initiatives and the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. I'm here today to ask the Board of Supervisors to ensure that a detailed breakdown of how county funds are being spent to address the COVID-19 crisis is made publicly available. The county has stated that it's currently expected to spend $100 million by the end of the fiscal year, and it expects this spending to grow as new needs and approaches arise. I understand that the county is still assessing its financial situation and is expecting a preliminary analysis later this month. However, as the county continues to understand its financial position so that informed decisions can be made, members of the public deserve access to this information as well. The residents of this county should be able to easily understand exactly how public funds are being spent to support their needs during this crisis. The Board of Supervisors should ensure that a publicly accessible document is made available online that breaks down how and where the county has been spending money to address the COVID-19 crisis. This information should be as detailed as possible and include specific programs and services, not just top-line information about spending at the group level. The public needs to know exactly what choices this government has been making to support its needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll go back to 8170. 8170, if you'd like to address the board on item 1, please state your name now. 8170. If not, let's try 7846. 7846, would you like to address the board on item 1? Okay, we'll move on to 9366. 9366.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Neil Anderson. I'm the President of the Board of Directors at North Coast Village here in North County. I would respectfully request to have 4 minutes of your time as I am representing 11 different small businesses here in the harbor section of Oceanside, California. It's my honor to have the opportunity to address you today. We are here as collective owners of 11 so-called non-essential businesses that operate, we used to operate, in support of the Harbor District. I am speaking on behalf of these businesses, and combined, these businesses had millions of dollars in revenue streams, and for months now, those streams are no longer being generated. We realize we're only a microcosm of business owners across the nation that are not only hurting, but are quickly being economically strangled into oblivion. Our businesses, our family fortunes, and our very way of life is threatened by the mandates that are presently in place by our state. We believe your hands to be tied as it relates to your ability to sanction anything different or to deviate from their oppression. And if not, we urge you to hear our collective pleas for leniency. We know you're told these things every day by your constituents that they're suffering greatly. We respectfully request that you address the state as soon as possible regarding the concerns we have that our life's work is on the verge of becoming extinct for good and forever. All that we have worked for over the years is being stolen from us by these erroneous measures. You may or may not be aware that despite the 50 individual state requirements across America, some non-essential businesses are opening. They're succeeding. They're breathing life back into their economies. They're doing it safely, and the curve of the COVID-19 virus continues to flatten. While they're only operating at about 40% capacity, these open and closed section restaurants, each with their own requirements, are saving the lives of Americans that are struggling to put food in their children's mouths. We have a question for you. If a Walmart can be open to the public with people practicing social distancing and wearing masks, why can't our restaurants? Why can Southwest Airlines fly planes with 100 people on board? Why can we not put open tables on our sidewalks and deliver to-go food where people can sit out there? As of Monday, there were approximately 54,000 positively tested people in 40 million in our state. That means we have a 99.9987 chance of testing negative for this virus.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to please summarize your comments.
I was asking for an extra minute, if I may, please, Clerk. We as business owners in San Diego strongly support Orange County and their cities in their newly filed actions at law against the state. What is good for Los Angeles or San Francisco is not necessarily good for San Diego. And if you have any autonomy from the state, can you please show mercy and allow us to first
Sir, I'm going to ask you to please summarize your comments.
Yes, sir, and be healthy second. We ask you this because if we are healthy first, but our businesses are dying, we are effectively dead.
Thank you.
Please reconsider and get autonomy from the state. We thank you for your efforts, specifically Supervisor Jacobs. Thank you, ma'am. Have a
Thank
good day.
you. Our next speaker is 8257.
Hi, my name is Mark Rogoff, and I'm calling from the San Diego League, which is a college baseball summer league here in America's finest city and America's finest county, frankly. Fortunately, I had been schooled on civic leadership early in my career from the likes of Larry Lucchino, Dr. Charles Steinberg, and the late, great George Mitrovich, and more recently in the last couple months with San Marcos Mayor Rebecca Jones, Supervisor Gaspar, Supervisor Desmond, and I appreciate their and everyone's leadership and guidance as we weave our way through this issue. I'd like to thank profusely the entire board, for pushing ahead, doing everything you're doing, pushing back with the governor, to make this a more localized issue. And I would ask you continue to do that, and not just from a geography standpoint, but from the type of business standpoint. I don't think measures should be, unilaterally in place for all types of businesses. Just for instance, our entire clientele base is 18 to 21-year-olds who are at the top of their peak athletic performance, who we believe should be outside and playing. So if I heard it right earlier during the meeting, there may be a way to submit specific plans to get approval. I would encourage that. Getting a yes or no would be helpful. And if it's a no, to get the recommendations back to amend the plans. Again, please continue to be leaders in reopening. This country wasn't built on people who just sit around and wait for something to happen. We need to make things happen. And lastly, I stand in front of the mirror every night, look at myself and just ask, does it make sense? Is it fair that 0.12% of the county is affecting so much, whether it's 25% unemployment? To me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem fair.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments, please.
We just have to keep moving forward, and I appreciate, again, the entire board, and let's keep doing it. Let's go.
Thank you. I'll do a final call for 8170. 8170, if you'd like to address the board, please state your name for the record now.
Hi, my name is Maria Reyes, and I am a member of ACE in the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. I'm a resident of Chula Vista and a renter. I am here today to ask that our county invest in protection for tenants, especially resources for tenant counseling and rental assistance program. I would also like to ask that you support the campaign to cancel rents and mortgage locally and push the state to do the same. Before this pandemic, many of us were already struggling to pay our rent. Now that so many people are unable to go to work, things are getting worse. Even though there are many different moratoriums right now throughout the county that prohibit eviction related to COVID-19 is not enough. We are still responsible to pay everything back when this is over. And how are we supposed to pay everything if we are not working? What we need is money for tenant counseling to make sure tenants know their rights and how to protect themselves from abusive landlords. Increase funding for emergency rental assistance programs to help those families who are struggling the most. And most importantly, help to cancel rents and mortgage so no one loses their home after this pandemic. And no family has to choose between putting food on the table or having a roof over their head. Thank you, and I hope we can count on your support.
Thank you. And then we have a speaker with last four digits, 8500. If you'd like to address the board on item 1, please state your name for the record.
This is Julie Lawn, and I'm just listening to it on this, so I'm sorry. I don't need to address the board on this line.
Oh, thank you. We have no remaining speakers on this item. I believe there was one other one who we may be waiting on, but perhaps Chairman Cox, we can go to comments from your colleagues, and then we'll let you know if we have one more caller who joins for this item.
Very good. Well, I want to take a moment and thank the staff for the update and the incredible work that they've done in putting this report together, and certainly to address this crisis. I just can't say enough about what a great job our county staff are doing. Seems like every day there is something new and we have to adapt to. I know you're all working tirelessly to navigate this new normal and guide us all through this difficult time. I also want to give a special shout out to our nurses. As was mentioned earlier today, this is National Nurses Week, and we would normally be doing a proclamation at this meeting in order to honor social distancing guidelines, but we're doing it all virtually, obviously. But that doesn't take away from our tremendous appreciation for the critical work that you do each and every day. So to the nurses throughout the San Diego region, thank you for what you do, and congratulations on National Nurses Week. I want to take an opportunity to thank all the speakers we've heard this morning. Everybody has said it, and it's a very difficult time that we're going through. We're working with the best information we can to try to reopen businesses as quick as we can, to reopen recreational opportunities. And as we pointed out many times, we don't control the entire situation. Certainly the governor has his directives that we have to comply with, and our public health officers here in the county of San Diego are working right now as we speak to come up with those guidelines that will allow businesses to reopen in a reasonable time frame, some of them starting as early as this Friday. Lastly, I want to thank the public for listening to our doctors and doing your best to adhere to the public health orders. We understand San Diegans are probably one of the toughest places to stay indoors is the San Diego region and out of the sunshine. But we certainly can't get through this crisis without your participation and active involvement. So thank you for helping us to flatten the curve, and let's keep up the good work. With that, I would make a motion to accept the staff recommendations, which is to receive an update on the COVID-19 response, ratify all actions taken by the Chief Administrative Officer, Public Health Officer, Director of Purchasing and Contracting, and Director of the Department of General Services in response to the local health emergency and local emergency, and take any other actions necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic emergency response. That would be my motion, and I would ask for a second and see if there's any additional comments by supervisors.
I'll second your motion, but I'd like to make a couple comments, please.
Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, Supervisor Desmond. Thank you very much, and for all of the speakers that came on, we really heard your passion. We really heard, the frustration and the anxiety out there as far as getting businesses open. We all want to get businesses open as soon as possible. May 1st was my choice, but we're here and we're still. And Friday is looking. We're cracking the door, but it's not going to be quite enough. And 25% unemployment rate is just unsustainable. We cannot, we can't wait for 30% or 35%. This is terrible. And I did hear about, businesses in Vista and restaurants that are going to be shutting down permanently. So, this is, we have to start opening these businesses very quickly. So I applaud Supervisor Jacob in your motion earlier that we, requesting from the state that, basically local control to get these businesses open. I don't think a broad brush statewide is really the best effect. We know here in San Diego, the businesses that can operate safely, and I think most of them can. And we've heard the facts, California's got like 40 million people population, over 55,000, almost 55,000 have tested positive. That's less than 0.1% throughout the state. And of that 0.1%, 4% of those have died. I mean, it's tragic for any death, but we have to take some risks, in order and keep the economy going. Our 25% unemployment here in San Diego County has taken on such an economic, tragedy for everybody here. I mean, businesses small and large, but mostly it's the smaller mom and pop family businesses that are really taking it on the chin. the big box stores are providing. And, one analogy I heard the other day was, you can go to Walmart and not knocking them, but you go there and buy a bicycle, but a family-owned bicycle shop can't be open. So some businesses are thriving and some are not, and I think it's unfair, and we need to open as many as possible. And this is, let's not let the virus be, the cause of any more deaths. We don't want to see that, but we don't want to see any economic death either. Businesses just aren't going to be able to survive. And every day, all of our offices, we hear from San Diegans who are never going to officially recover and reopen their businesses. So these are the facts. And then the goal of, at the beginning was to reduce our hospital surge and protect the most vulnerable, flatten the curve. And thanks to our county health officials and the citizens of San Diego County, you did it. We've done that. Let's move on. Let's get these businesses open. And the desire of San Diego County is to get back to work. And I think that desire is strong, is very strong, and as strong as the will to get back to work, and with our willingness to follow the health guidelines that got us to where we are today, following those same guidelines to get essential businesses open. So hopefully the governor will hear us. We'll be able to get San Diego back to open as soon as possible. And I once again applaud Supervisor Jacob for your motion to ask for local control here in San Diego County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Apparently, we had a little bit of a glitch. There's two other speakers that did timely request to speak, and so I'm going to ask the clerk if he would go ahead and allow them to go ahead and give their comments at this time. And please keep your comments within 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Cox. Our first caller is 3640.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for my mistake there, but my name is David Garcias. I'm the president of SEIU Local 221. I'm proud to represent more than 10,000 county workers that are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic here in San Diego. I also want to join those wishing a happy birthday to Supervisor Desmond. I did look and find that, several of our members are also share your birthday, 2 nurses in Edgemore, a protective service worker that does home visits to vulnerable populations, a medical records technician at the East Mesa Juvenile Detention Center. They all put themselves on the line every day and would like support from the board for their birthday as well. Today, the County Employees Union, SEIU Local 221, standing with the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition and its demands, including ensuring testing is available for all before moving to lift social distancing guidelines, making sure no-cost testing and treatment centers prioritize low-income communities with a high percentage of confirmed COVID-19 cases, and essential workers and areas with limited access to healthcare centers. Now more than ever, we reject the false choice between supporting employees and supporting vulnerable communities. The county must protect working families from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and address underlying inequities in our economy. SEIU is currently advocating at the national level at Congress as they prepare a stimulus package to support local government's lost revenue. We urge you to support the recommendations of the coalition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our final caller has last 4 digits, 3000. 3000, if you'd like to address the board, please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Susan Laird. I'm living in the community of Allied Gardens. I'm currently in finance for a major brand hotel in downtown San Diego, currently running on empty. I am calling to voice my opinion on an adamant objection to the continued closure of businesses in the city of San Diego and the county. The original number put out by the CDC was that over 2 million Americans were going to die, and that's why we needed to stay home. That number was then dropped to 220,000, and here we are. Deaths in the country, deaths in the city are very low. They're currently a little over 100 in the county of San Diego. That's almost comparable to the flu. The death, I think you guys have already talked about the population in not only in San Diego, but also in the state. I applaud the board's decision in voting unanimously on the autonomous, on keeping San Diego autonomous. I just would like to ask, along with the other speakers, that we open San Diego fully, 100%, all businesses. You are killing our business. My hotel is barely breathing here. We've laid off about 95% of our staff. It's very stressful. So I ask that you please, please, please open San Diego. I still don't understand why Walmart and Target is open, but I can't go to the local hobby store. It's like we're picking winners and losers. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I had a lot more to say, but I'm super nervous. So again, thank you to the board and happy birthday, Jim Desmond. You're definitely my hero. I super appreciate all of your YouTube announcements every day. I listen to them and share them with everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item. Chairman Cox.
Very good. We do have a motion and a second. I don't see any other requests to speak from my colleagues on the board. So if that's the case, I would ask the clerk to please go ahead and call the roll.
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Very good. What I intend to do is to break for lunch, but I would like to, before we do that, take up item number 2, which is adopt resolutions and authorize acceptance of older adult services revenue agreements and grants for the fiscal year 2021 and authorize to pursue future funding for opportunities for programs serving older adults and persons with disabilities. This item was pulled because there was a request from the public to speak. My understanding is that individual was really wanting to speak on another item. So let me ask the clerk if there are any requests at this time to speak on item number 2.
No, there are no requests to speak on this item. Thank you.
If not, can I get a motion to approve the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Gaspar, seconded by Vice Chair Desmond to approve the staff recommendations on number 2. I see no requests to speak on this item, so if the clerk would please call the roll.
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Very good. What I would propose to do now is to take a break for a little bit less than an hour. Reconvening at 1:30, we have items 13, 15, and 16, plus Air Pollution Control District item number 1. We have approximately about 30 speakers or so on those items. So we will reconvene at 1:30 and pick up those remaining items on the agenda. We stand adjourned until 1:30.